All right, folks. Well, did Zelensky go too far? I think that's the question. And, kind of what's the future of Ukraine going to look like? I guess we're going to be finding out pretty darn soon. Stand by. We're going to talk about it.
You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast.
All right, folks. Well, again, this is kind of a spontaneous little podcast that we wanted to throw together. I think it was definitely worth commenting. And, of course, we're already playing the wrong intros and everything else. I'm going to blame that on Chris. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I want to go ahead and say hi to everybody over in the comments. We got Nub, Mr. Riojas, NPCV, Tommy Hager, Khan, Jirok216, Robert Cochran, Jeff Johnson, Jason TG Sponsler, John Rollins, Lori Matthews, Steve Vicante, Steve Schaefer, and many more. And if you're just tuning in, make sure you guys say hi to us. We'll definitely try to get you in on the conversation. And folks, we'll definitely be taking your questions, reading your comments, all the good stuff. This is your podcast. It's all about getting your point of view, not just hearing us, flap our gums in the wind. I mean, that's what Chris does.
Yeah, hello to everyone. Well, yeah. Gary flaps his gums, I give the wisdom, but it's about more than that. It's about the comments as well in the chat.
That's right. I am traveling right now. My youngest, Noah, he is in the state championship for wrestling here in West Virginia. He's doing good. At the worst, depending on how he does tomorrow, the worst he can end up is his top 8. So, again, he's doing pretty good. So, anyways. Chris, we got a lot to talk about, man. If you want to go ahead, let's just jump right into it. If people haven't seen it, let's remind them of what exactly happened. And I think there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, so we mentioned in the last show that Zelensky was coming to meet Trump. And we knew that was going to be contentious because they sort of have very different ideas of what wants to happen. Trump has sort of made clear, we went through his comments in previous shows, that he wasn't going to give a US security guarantee. He sort of thought this minerals deal, that was basically the best guarantee he could do, to open it up to American businesses to come in and sort of mine the rare earth minerals and stuff. And I guess that would be some sort of disincentive for Putin not to break the deal or something like that. But he won't go with the full US security guarantee, which is what Zelensky's pushing for. But that's sort of very related to like the NATO Article 5 guarantee, where if there's some kind of conflict with Ukraine, it automatically signs America up to a war. So, of course, America isn't going to do that. And even though Trump has made that clear that that's sort of not on the table, and maybe Europe can do some kind of guarantees instead, Zelensky, even when he comes to the office, he's still pushing for it in front of everyone for this guarantee. But, yeah, I won't get ahead of myself too much. But basically, we knew this was going to be contentious, and it was. And, we'll kind of go through it. But, yeah, I think Zelensky basically completely dropped the ball and tried to overplay his hand, and Trump wasn't standing for it. So I thought it was a glorious thing to witness.
It really was.
We'll go
watch
through
it again
and see. Yeah, I could watch it a few times actually.
Right.
So this is sort of the start. I'm not sure, because the whole thing goes for about 50 minutes. The last 10 minutes is the most, is sort of what went viral. Because some people have tried to say that this was like a planned ambush against Zelensky, but I don't think it was at all, because there was 40 minutes leading up to it. And at the end, it sort of broke down, but it could have went a totally different way if Zelensky wasn't such a clown, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and hold on. Let's talk about that, because clearly both J.D. Vance and Trump were kind of caught off guard that he was just started running his mouth in front of the media the way that he did. That was very clear to me. And that's where J.D. Vance was like, hey, you know what? Stop. I mean, it's completely inappropriate what you're doing, and it was. To be so disrespectful, to come to our country, to sit in our White House, and to just air grievances in front of the media like he has been doing. This has been kind of his MO. This is how he's gotten sympathy, because he's a freaking grifter. But to do that in the White House in front of live cameras is absolutely not how diplomacy is done, folks. That is the last thing that he should have absolutely. If he wanted anything out of this president, I think he burnt every bridge that he had ever possibly had with the president. And Trump will probably come back and still do something with him. But I think throwing him out was the right answer. But anyways, go ahead and play this, and we'll talk about it some more after that.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelensky of Ukraine.
Oh, that's a little soft, isn't it? I might switch up for
We've been
another
working
version.
Very hard, very close. So we've actually known each other for a
But
long
yeah,
time.
I can hear it. Run with it.
Dealing with each other for a long time and very well.
See what the chat says. I might, in the background,
We
I
had
might look for
little
another thing we can switch to if we need to.
negotiations back, But that worked out great. I think for both countries, I think for the world, actually, beyond both countries. And we have something that is a very fair deal. And we look forward to getting in and digging and working and getting some of the rare earth. But it means we're going to be inside, and it's a big commitment from the United States, and we appreciate working with you very much. And we will continue to do that.
Yeah, I might swap over to this one. It's a bit louder.
That worked out great. I think for
Oh, it's too loud. The other one was fine, Chris. They're saying it's good on my end. I think your audio might be soft. You have a.
It's
have
just
a
a lot
volume
softer
knob
than
there.
you are. It's just a lot softer than you are, I'm pretty sure. All right, I can keep playing with it.
Than me. Anyways, go ahead.
To me, it honestly comes off like it's half the volume. Yeah, see. Yeah, I just turned up my volume and Gary blew out my ears. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's way softer than us. And this.
All right, play it.
All right, hang on. I'll find a middle ground. I'll turn the loud one down a little bit.
for both countries, I think for the world, actually.
Let us
beyond
know in the
both
chat.
countries. And we have something that is a very fair deal. And we look forward to getting in and digging and working and getting some of the...
Just quickly comment on that. There was that clip where Zelensky, before this, where Trump greeted him, and he said, "Oh, good to see you dressed up for the occasion," or something like that. Like straight away, Trump was, I mean, it was sort of in good fun, but yeah, he did point out that, yeah, you got that same stupid PR get-up. It's like he's trying to emulate Churchill. Other people have been saying, "Oh, but Churchill, he came to America in a you know, not in a suit." It's like, yeah, this is who Zelensky, through his probably PR team, is trying to emulate. And that's why
Well, he
he's
doesn't
doing it. It's
remind
all
me of
propaganda.
Churchill. He reminds me of freaking Che Guevara or freaking Castro. That's what he looks like. I mean, he looks like he's playing the part
Yeah.
of a dictator with his silly getup that he always has on and combat fatigues.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks stupid to me, but it must work for some people, I suppose. Some people seem to
No,
like
it
him.
doesn't.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think you overestimate people's
The
intelligence. Some
people that
don't.
like him. So here's the thing: the people that like him are going to like him
no
no matter
it
what.
is.
There's the persuadable of us in America that he's completely. I think he's doing a terrible job with this get up. Like, hey, come to our country, ask us for help. You know, throw out a suit, act like you're here to do business, act like you're the president of a freaking country, and show a little respect. Now, what I will say is that reporter that called him out on it, I thought that was a little over the top and kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seemed a little uncouth for the situation. I don't think that was necessary, but you know, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
the rare earth, but it means we're going to be inside, and it's a big commitment from the United States, and we appreciate working with you very much, and we will continue to do that. We have had some very good discussions with Russia. I spoke with President Putin, and we're going to try and bring this to a close. It's something that you want and that he wants. We have to
This is the
negotiate
counter
a deal.
view. I think me and
But
Gary
we've,
disagree.
started the confines of a deal.
You know, someone's saying we're both wrong. Trump didn't want anything except provoking Zelensky and intentionally orchestrated the situation. A lot of people have come out and said this was a planned ambush, but as we'll go through, it's not the case. I don't think so. But you be the judge, people watching this. I think a lot of people haven't seen the full thing. And as we said before, I think, yeah, if Zelensky played it differently, it wouldn't have ended up like that. So, yeah.
And I think something can happen. The big thing is the number of
I can turn this up a bit more.
soldiers,
if
mostly
needed.
at this point,
So
but
chat, let me
soldiers
know.
being killed. You're losing thousands of soldiers. So on both sides, we're losing a lot of soldiers, and we want to see it stop, and we want to see the money get put to different kinds of use, like the rebuilding. And we're going to be working very hard. But we've had a lot of very good conversations. I will say until we came along, the Biden administration didn't speak to Russia whatsoever. They didn't speak to anybody. They just allowed this to continue. And I will say that, I'll say in front of you, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, if I were president, this war would have never happened. We would have had a deal negotiated for you without having to go through what you've gone through. But your soldiers have been unbelievably brave. We've given them great equipment, but somebody has to use the equipment. They've been unbelievably brave, and we give them great credit. This was supposed to be over very quickly, and here we are 3 years later.
Whoops, sorry.
So I give tremendous credit to your generals and your soldiers and yourself in the sense that it's been very hard fighting, very tough fighting. They're great fighters. And you have to be very proud of them from that standpoint. But now we want to get it over with. It's enough, right? We want to get it over with. So
I think that's important. It's like, it's enough. Got to end it now. You're very brave, but no more fighting. Let's get it off. All throughout this, there's little moments where Trump's saying his part and Zelensky says his part, and they're at odds. So it's sort of almost inevitable it might sort of come, unless you had a very diplomatic leader like Zelensky, which we don't.
Well, look, I mean, ultimately, everybody knows what Trump expected out of this deal, including Zelensky. And I'm sure, again, Zelensky has his ambassador right there sitting like 8 feet away from Trump as it is. So they've already been talking. They know what Trump expects out of this. And whatever differences they have, those are supposed to be hashed out behind closed doors. And it could have, like you said, this entire thing could have been completely avoided if Zelensky didn't act like just a petulant child. And to come to the United States and demand more money without any sort of oversight, stipulation put onto that, I think is just bonkers. But, he's been doing these rounds and, there's all kinds of politicians all over the world, and especially in Europe, willing to throw money that isn't theirs at a problem that isn't theirs to begin with, because that's not their money. And it makes them feel like there's some sort of hero by, bailing out this country that really has nothing to do with, definitely not the United States. But I digress.
Yeah. Yeah, and he keeps pushing for the US security guarantee, which, look, I understand that from Ukraine's perspective, he would want that. But Trump's made clear he's not giving that. But Zelensky wants to try and make a spectacle in front of the media to try and leverage Trump to sort of give it to him. It's just the wrong way to handle it.
Well, the problem with that is, look, they were going through General Jack Keane on Fox News the other day, who I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, but he was going through the deal that was being proposed. And, basically what they're talking about is they're talking about investing millions, if not billions of dollars into Ukraine. And they're going to stand up American infrastructure. Yeah, we're going to be making money off this. Ukraine's going to be making money off this. That's going to lead to more of diplomatic relations with Ukraine. We're going to have American companies over there. So the point that he was making, and this is very true, is that you're going to have security built in without us overtly giving any sort of guarantees, which would be another provocation to Russia. We would end up over there. We would end up having so much invested monetarily, and we're going to have U.S. civilians over there, diplomats, politicians, U.S. companies over there. Look, we're going to end up protecting Ukraine. But what would be stupid for Trump to say is, like, we guarantee anything when we haven't gotten anything we haven't got a single thing from Zelensky. And what Trump is here saying is like, hey, you know what? Tell us that you're going to play ball with us and give us a reason to put boots on the grounds there and invest millions of dollars of American money, billions of dollars of American money. And hey, let's recoup some of our money. And of course, if we have American interests and American assets there, it goes along with the deal. And this guy's too stupid to realize that. He's wanting to get a guarantee to get into the UN, which nobody wants. He wants a verbal guarantee in paper. And again, these are the types of things. This is how diplomacy normally goes. We don't need a piece of paper that's not binding. I mean, that paper, whether it's Zelensky breaks a deal or the United States breaks a deal, both of us, look, I wouldn't trust the United States to keep a deal either. I mean, we've broken deals with all kinds of people all over the world. But you tie up our interests in there, We have American companies, American taxpayers, American shareholders now investing in that country. Of course, security is going to come with it. But it doesn't need to be written down. It doesn't need to be said. It's just a given. And this guy's too dumb to realize it.
Exactly. I mean, Trump has really shown his sort of deal-making credibility with this one, because it is such a tough situation, and this probably is the best deal America can give. And to be honest, I wasn't thrilled about it, because in a way this mineral deal will sort of involve America a bit more than I would like, and would be some kind of a guarantee, because it does have businesses there. I would almost prefer just to say, look, we're not giving you any more money, just agree to give up these territories and we're going to end the war. But he's sort of, that's more pro-Russian, that's a more pro-Russian solution or whatever. So he is already giving Ukraine a bone. They have no cards, as he has said many times before, and he'll say again here. This is the best Ukraine can get as a guarantee. Take it or leave it. This is what America can do. You can organise something else with Europe if you want. But no, that's not good enough for Zelensky. He wants to keep pushing for US security guarantees in defiance of what everything as Trump has said. And it's like, how did he expect Trump to react to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, just in the, if everybody cares about equity here, the fact of the matter is that Ukraine is mineral rich. They're resource rich. They do not have the capacity or the ability to turn those into, goods and money. Somebody's going to have to come in there. And basically, is it going to be European nations come in there, Russia come in there, or China come in there? No, it needs to be the U.S. Because first of all, if you want the UN, but you're trying to, literally, the UN is nothing without the United States. Really,
NATO.
If you're smart about this, UN, the NATO period, neither one of them mean anything without the United States. So if you get the United States, you're getting all the benefits without the bullshit. And this is, and he doesn't realize what's going on here and what Trump is actually offering him. He's just wanting some, I don't know. He's not a very smart guy.
There was some CNN commentator was on the Bill Maher show, sort of saying after this, he said, look, Zelensky should have said, look, really sort of sucked up to him a bit more. He was sort of joking. He was sort of overemphasizing the point, but he sort of said, he should have said, look, Trump, here's a medal, the order of such and such, a medal for Ukraine. This is the only, we've never given this to a civilian before. It's the highest honor to give this Ukrainian award. Thanks for this. Come to Ukraine as soon as you can, and we'll maybe even think about building a statue to you or whatever. Maybe this is, too much or whatever, but just a little bit of buttering Trump up a little bit is what you need, because you're so dependent. He's there, he's supposedly this great patriot fighting for Ukrainian lives and to save the country. Well, to do that, you need to get on Trump's good side. So what's it worth? What's your country worth? Isn't it worth sort of a little bit of groveling? Maybe groveling's too strong of a word, but just not what he did, where he wants to be this tough guy defying Trump.
Just be gracious. Be gracious. And then you can spew all of your problems about Trump or the way he's doing these things behind closed door. Just don't litigate it in front of the American media. I mean, it's really simple.
Yeah.
It's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to sign the agreement at the conference in the East Room in a little while, right after lunch. And we'll be having lunch together. We're also discussing some other things. And we appreciate everybody being here. It's somewhat of an exciting moment, but the really exciting moment is when they stop the shooting and we end up with a deal. And I think we're fairly close to getting that, and an honor to have you. And please, I'd like to say something.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for invitation. And really, I hope that this first document will be first step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, our people, our children. I really count on it. And of course, we count that America will not stop support. Really, for us, it's very important to support and to continue it. I want to discuss it with details further during our conversation, and of course, the infrastructure or security guarantees. Because for today, I understand what Europe is ready to do, And of course, I want to discuss with you what United States will be ready to do. And I really count on your strong position to stop Putin. And you said that enough with the war. I think that is very important, Ben, to say these words to Putin at the very beginning of war, because he is a killer and terrorist. But I hope that together we can stop him. But for us, it's very important to, to save our country, our values, our freedom and democracy, and of course, no compromises with the killer about our territories, but it will be later. And of course, what I wanted, we spoke about it by phone with you, about the drones production. We have very good drones production. I think the best one in the world for today because of the war. Yes, and of course, we need very much the air defense. You have the best air defense in the world, and really you helped us under attacks of Russians. And I want to speak how we can exchange the licenses. We're open to share the licenses of all our drones with you, of course, with the United States. And we need licenses for quick production of air defense. Even after the war, we need our nation to be calm, that we are secure. So that's why we need this air shield. And of course, about this, I want to speak about the contingents. I think that France and UK already spoke to you, and we know that Europe is ready, but without the United States, they will not be ready to be as strong as we need. And then the last point, last not least, about exchange, about our people and children. And you know that these crazy Russians, that they stolen 20,000 of children, Ukrainian children. They changed their names, they changed their families, relatives, and now they're in Russia. We want to bring them back, and really, it's a big dream, task, and goal for me, and our warriors. By the way, Mr. President, we released more than 4,000 warriors from Russian prison, but there are thousands more in the prison. I wanted to share with you some images. How it's. You have just can I now?
Yeah,
Have I?
Just
some minute.
Just before we get onto this bit, I just want to quickly touch on some of the things he said already, because basically everything he said is at odds with Trump. Trump has sort of made clear that this deal is about as good as America's going to give, and the rest you can work out with Europe. And straight away, Zelensky's like, yep, this deal's a good first step, and then we're going to work out the security guarantees. Trump's made clear this is the security guarantee for the US. So already that's sort of at odds. Look, with all this, I understand that he would push for different things, but he has no leverage and he can't demand it. He has to basically beg for these things if he wants them. And especially when Trump's already said it's not going to happen. So first step, straight out of the gate he said that. And, Trump said we've got to end the war. Zelensky frames it as we need to stop Putin. And he said, Trump said we need to end the war, but it's important to note that Putin started the war. Okay, well. So you're not saying I agree we should end the war. Straight away, Putin's a terrorist, he's a killer. It's hard to, as Trump will say later, it's kind of hard to get a deal with that kind of stuff. And he says there'll be no compromise about our territories. That's completely undermined. Of course there's going to be compromise about your territories. He's basically spitting in the face of any kind of deal. Then he's like, we need your air defences. Okay, well, how about asking nicely? Straight away, there's no thanks to. By the way, if you look, because after this he met with Keir Starmer of the UK, and the very first thing he said, basically the equivalent of this speech here, is I want to thank the UK for all the support they've done, and all the this, that, and the other. None of that in here. And, he talks about the crazy Russians kidnapped our kids. I don't know. I think that's what Putin has the arrest warrant for so-called kidnapping children. But I think these are orphans, and they've sort of, I guess Russia would argue they've moved them out of harm's way. I don't know exactly the details of that. But he's litigating all these kind of details straight away. And, talking about prisoner exchanges. And this is all, okay, fair enough. But he's kind of getting into the weeds of all this stuff in his opening sort of statement. And now he's going to move on to, I guess, showing some Ukrainian prisoners how they were before and after being in Russian jail. And I think what he's trying to do here is because, Trump talked about the Gaza deal with hostages, and hostages came out very malnourished. And Trump was obviously affected by that, and he compared it to the Holocaust. And look how horrible this is. I'm pretty sure Zelensky's seen that. And he's like, that might be a way to convince Trump. I'll just show him some photos of some Russian prisoners, some Ukrainian prisoners that have fared poorly in prison. That's what he's going to do now. This is all tactics to try and get Trump to do what he wants in the first stage of this
Sure.
sort of diplomatic thing. You know.
Yeah, and again, most of this is, this guy can't read the room. These are things that should be being discussed behind closed doors, and that's the problem. George Coup, we definitely always welcome differing opinions, and we welcome yours. Look, I haven't heard anybody make a good case as to why we should be supporting this war, and other than Russians bad. Right. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on within the Ukraine itself that I think is not being addressed. The fact of the matter is this guy has acted very much like a dictator. He has banned the Orthodox Church. He has taken prisoner dissenters. He has not. He's banned any sort of counter information whatsoever other than what he's putting out. He has a control on the country, and he's treating people that disagree with this war very much like dictators would in any other third world. So there's a lot going on within Ukraine that is being brushed under the rug, that the American people aren't seeing the bad side of this guy and the bad side of this war. And, he's talking about, prisoners, Ukrainian prisoners are in Russia. What he's not talking about is the way that what they've done to prisoners that they've taken in Ukraine. They've mass murdered, and broken any sort of Geneva Convention rules and regulations that we have on taking prisoners within Ukraine. So there's a lot going on here that, again, we're getting one side of the story in the American media. And that's a real problem, because this war is not just on either side of this. And the fact of the matter that we're spending billions of dollars sending to Ukraine is absolutely insane. We can't help the people in South Carolina. We can't help the people in California right now. We can't help the people in Maui, but yet we can spend billions of dollars. And the reason that the left wants this is because we have a political class that is tightly aligned with the military-industrial complex, and they are getting rich. They're getting rich personally off of this. And on top of that, what we have is Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all these other defense contractors that are filling the coffers of these people's campaign funds and these different political PACs. And that's what's going on. And unfortunately, the Democrats, and again, a lot of establishment Republicans, including jackasses like Dan Crenshaw, even Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, those types, they are using their constituencies as pawns and getting them to support a war that makes zero sense for America to even be involved with. If we're going to hold back Putin and we're going to invest our tax dollars over there, we should be getting something out of this. And, we're just being gaslit all over the place, and nobody wants to look at the other side. And there's a reason for that. They're not telling the other side of the story. And that's a real problem. And everybody in America, including Democrats that love this guy so much, they're choosing a dictator in a foreign country over our own president. That's what you guys are asking. That's what you guys are doing. And you're sitting there belittling the president, trying to turn this on the president of the United States and the vice president of the United States, while this jackass that has done nothing for this country is begging for money and is strictly a grifter. He's also getting rich, by the way. And many other politicians. Ukraine is rife with corruption, and anybody that pretends otherwise is absolutely, you're either dumb or you're willfully ignorant, because that's the only option for this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And with you mentioned about the prisoners on the other side, I remember when Russia invaded, at first they were sort of near Kiev and they sort of pulled back. That's a whole other story. But there was a video that came out of Ukrainian soldiers that, I can't remember all the details because this is obviously a few years ago, but they had dead Russian soldiers on the ground that looked like they'd been executed. They were face down, they were on the ground, they had their wrists tied behind their backs. And it's like they'd all been shot in the back of the head after they were captured. And of course, the media didn't really capture that. I mean, I'm sure that's against some kind of Geneva Conventions or whatever. With these photos he's going to show now, like, yeah, sure, this is horrible, but at least they're alive. I mean, Ukraine this is just one instance. I don't want to sort of generalize the whole conflict, but that is an example where you had Ukrainian soldiers. They captured Ukrainian soldiers and just seemingly executed them. Yeah, I was going to bring up.
And that's been documented many, many times. It's not like there was just one instance of that. And I understand the. I understand where that comes from, right? You have these Russian soldiers invading, I get that. But we can't sit here and pretend that like the Ukrainians are just without sin, because they're not. And they weren't without sin before this started, and they sure as hell aren't without sin now. And, they're ripping people out of the streets and conscripting them into their military. That's another fact that liberals all of a sudden love. They love a conscripted, forced military service. So, what we have, what's going on in the Ukraine, fundamentally, almost every American is against, and yet you guys are throwing your support blindly behind this guy in his jumpsuit. It boggles my mind. And I want to bring up this comment because I think this is true. I really do believe this, that Trump, same as Singh here, I believe that Trump genuinely just wants to stop the slaughter that's happening on both sides. We do have a serious crisis going on in Ukraine that needs to end, and we need to de-escalate this quickly, because this really can turn into World War III. And I don't understand why people can't wrap their heads around this. Like, they're wanting to provoke Russia, and it drives me nuts, because we're talking about they still have more nuclear warheads than us. And if you believe that Putin is just so crazy, then guess what? It's probably a good idea to end this war as quickly and as peacefully as possible.
Yeah, and he said that many times. I love it, actually, when people are like, oh, but, if you sort of have a deal and Russia keeps some territories, isn't this like a Russian victory? And isn't this, they try and frame it that way. And Trump so often responds, look, I just want people to stop dying. I want the war to end. I want people to stop dying. And that's, I think, is his motivation. And I think it makes the most sense, especially when you consider the fact that Ukraine can't win this war. All they can do is drag it out. And I was going to bring up another comment from, Gray Hughes. So, it does suck that Russia can just invade in this day and age. But when does this war end without the rest of the world going to war and sending weapons to Ukraine? There is no end in sight. They just want to keep sending those weapons. And as Lindsey Graham has said before, it's the best investment he can think of, because we're killing Russians and we don't have to send any troops. And, there's no real victory for Ukraine in sight. Some people just want to drag this war out at the expense of Ukrainian and Russian lives, which is, I've always found disgusting. It was obvious from day one that Ukraine can't win this, but they want to drag it out as long as they can.
Let's address the propaganda, because here's the truth that I know is a fact, is that we are not getting the full story here in the United States and the West in general, and that's the problem. Somebody brought up the fact that we were talking about this in our chat preparing for the show with some other folks that help us out with the show. The information that you can find on Wikipedia and everywhere else about Ukraine, we're talking about the Minsk Accords, the Minsk Agreement, who broke that. The problem is that we're only getting one side of the story, and everything that we get from the media is, without a doubt, propaganda against Russia. I'm not saying that some of that isn't likely true, but what I'm saying is that we are getting a story that's intentionally bent against Russia, and they're going to throw things in there that make Russia look especially bad, and they're going to delete things in there that make Ukraine look bad. That's the problem with all the information that you can research on this. And one of the things that is extremely true, and somebody brought this up just a minute ago, is that we have entire Nazi brigade. Folks, it is not, this is something I didn't believe at first, and I ended up researching myself. They literally have Nazi brigades fighting in Ukraine. All right. It is a real thing. So do your own research on that as well. It's legit.
Yeah, and the media tries to gaslight that too. They say, oh, that's just Russian propaganda. And a common talking point in response to that is, oh, they've had the elections, and the so-called far-right sort of neo-Nazi parties, they never do too well. Yeah, but they have disproportionate power in the government after the coup and in the military. When the war against the separatists / Russia, however you want to frame it, started back in 2014, I have scenes in my documentary where the Ukrainian army was moving in to the separatist regions, and you can tell they didn't want to fire on their own people. People walked in front of the tanks and basically stopped them, and they turned the tanks around and went back home. There was no real desire from a lot of the Ukrainian army to crush the separatists in the east. But who did have the desire for that? The Azov Battalion and the old right sector and these neo-Nazi brigades that hate Russians genetically, basically. Because, yeah, their grandfathers fought with Hitler in World War II and committed massacres in Ukraine. You know, Azov Battalion, exactly. Even the saying we hear a lot, Slava Ukraina, Horoyam Slava, you know, glory to Ukraine. You hear it from Nancy Pelosi, you hear it from everyone, you hear it from Zelensky. This has been, I'm pretty sure this originates around World War II, and the heroes they're talking about, they're not talking about heroes in this war. They're talking about the UPA, Stepan Bandera, who, when the Nazis invaded Ukraine, they joined up with them. They sided with them. They were the heroes fighting the Soviets in World War II. Now, that's a whole, it's a complicated story. Eventually, the Nazis turned on Bandera and blah, 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 blah. But look, they have street names named after Bandera. They have statues. You know, every birthday, Stepan Bandera, they have these torchlit marches. You know, it's not everything. They are a minority in Ukraine. But it's just crazy that is always dismissed as Russian propaganda. But at the very start of the war, 2014, you know, the neo-Nazis, whatever, they were a massive part of this.
And I hate that I have to say this every single time, but look, I am under no illusion that Putin is our friend. Like, look, he is not a good guy either. But the fact is like, Ukraine isn't either. And like, we don't have a lot. We currently, other than the money that we've already spent, the billions of dollars of U.S. tax dollars that we've spent in there, we don't really have a dog in this fight. And I think it's really bad idea to constantly provoke Russia. It just doesn't make sense. And it's just silly. And we also have to realize that we have an entire intelligence apparatus, USAID, CIA, all these things that we talked about the last show, they've been set up to keep us warring with Russia. And we constantly are getting gaslit. We're constantly having anti-Russian propaganda thrown at us. I don't think that they're not a bad country, right? They're not ran by bad. They're definitely ran by bad people, including Putin. But we have other problems in the world. You know, if we just left Russia alone, they wouldn't send nukes at us. But what I can tell you is that if we leave China alone, they're going to eat our lunch economically, and they're a greater threat, and so is Iran. If we just left Iran alone and let them build their bombs, you know what? We would definitely have a nuclear holocaust here in the United States or against our allies. But we pretend they don't; those problems don't even exist. And yet here we are with a country that's had more nukes than us for the last 50 years, has never launched a nuke at us, really hasn't even antagonized us in any real way. We're the ones that are constantly provoking Russia, it without a doubt. So, you know, take all those things into account.
Yeah. So Zelensky, this whole time, wants to present a very one-sided point of view. And look, sometimes I might be seemingly giving this sort of one-sided, almost Russian point of view. I cop that a lot. And look, there is something to that because I generally will focus on the stuff that isn't commonly known. Like there are, you know, all the faults with Russia. We've heard them on the news every single day. So I will take a bit of time to point out the other side of the story, which will be called Russian propaganda, but there's still truth to it. Like it's not just a one-sided conflict. But, you know, I do appreciate the, you know, the counter perspective, but obviously disagree with it. Yeah, this one here, they are in the minority, but, you know, it gets kind of covered up and, you know, they try to pretend it doesn't happen. Like they literally have Bandera Street and statues and stuff.
They're a minority, but they are considered a legitimate. Like they're not being thrown out. Like it's like having the Libertarian Party here in the United States. That's what's crazy about this is that they are a functioning political party. They're well involved in the military. Like it is a ideology that continues to exist, and it's being not only being tolerated, but it is just part of the culture at this point.
Even Zelensky himself said that this Stepan Bandera is basically a Nazi Holocaust collaborator. He's like, yeah, some Ukrainians see him as cool, and that's understandable, something like that. I don't want to, you know, that's a paraphrasing or whatever. But even he was sort of like, yeah, well, you know, sort of understandable why some people think Bandera was cool. He's a symbol of the fight for Ukrainian independence. They frame it as if the Bandera was fighting both the Nazis and the Soviets, because I think at various times he was. I think the Nazis eventually arrested Bandera. But he was fighting with the Nazis when they invaded. And look, maybe this is Russian propaganda, but the Russian line goes that some of the massacres that the Ukrainian UPA forces were doing against Jews and Roma and all this kind of stuff apparently even shocked the Nazis. Now, that probably is Russian propaganda or whatever, but in Ukraine, I mean, you look at the massacres in World War II in Ukraine. Was it BBR or something? That was the Ukraine. That's Bandera. That's his group, actually. And it's, yeah, Zelensky says, yeah, some Ukrainians think he's cool. That's all right. Or understandable. I forget exactly what he said. But he didn't exactly condemn Bandera or condemn the atrocities of his group.
Well, I'll tell you, the first that I heard about Nazis in Ukraine was actually, it was a speech that Putin had given not long after this war had started. And I listened to that entire thing, and he kept talking about, hey, look, we got to stop this Nazi movement in Ukraine. And I thought it was BS. I really did. I was like, this is just propaganda, and he's just trying to say this to justify his move into Ukraine. And part of that's probably true in that he's just using something, but the thing that he's using to justify is true. And I was like, I got to look this up. This can't be true. And sure enough, it is. So again, that's something you're not hearing about in the media. And there's a reason for that, because that would start the support for Ukraine and the support for Zelensky would definitely wane if people knew that, like, there's legitimate Nazis, real Nazis in power that have influence and are tolerated to a high level in Ukraine. That would be a problem for the narrative overall. And that's something that's not reported.
And like the Russian perspective is never given to us properly, or it's given as like a straw man of like, look how ridiculous the Russian propaganda is. But you think about Russia in World War II, how many people did they lose? 20, 30 million people when the Nazis invaded through Ukraine. And now you've got all this tension on Ukraine with, the sort of Nazi influence getting covered up. You can say they're being paranoid or whatever, but it's an understandable, if it is paranoia, I don't really think it completely is, it's an understandable paranoia. And America knows this. They know that this is, we've talked about in previous things. They knew that this issue on Russia, this is like a red line for Ukraine. Moving NATO in there and, the threat of another invasion from Ukraine. Putin's basically like, look, I'm not taking any chances. It's never happening.
Let's play some more of this. And then I guess we can, however long you want to, the preface to the end, which is really what we need to get to. But while we're playing that, Chris, if you have some more information, I know you're more studied up on the Nazi movement in Ukraine. Gandalf Gray, and I'm sure many other people, number one, many are just now hearing about this. And number two, I think it's definitely worth talking about to add a little context to this discussion overall while that's playing, if you want to look up some of that stuff. Yeah,
I should have something. I've got a fair bit on that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's continue. Where are we?
So 1 minute.
Sorry.
I just you to
Zelensky's
understand
tactic to try and pull at Trump's heartstrings, maybe to get him to think emotionally.
Circumstances, in what situation they are, and what the attitude of Russia to our prisoners. That guys, just you before and after. And you see before and after, just you to understand. Now thousands of such guys, ladies and men, there. And that, so they don't eat, they beat them, and they,
Like, what is this?
They do a lot of
just on the deal,
bad things. So out of, even during the war, there are rules. Everybody knows there are rules during the war. So these guys, they don't have any rules. You see that 50, 60 kilograms left, and a lot of such things. And I didn't want to show you what the changes with images of children, because I will just share with you. And I mean, it's looking tragic.
Yep, that's tough stuff.
Yeah, I wanted very much to give you, and you see it.
Yeah.
This is pastor, by the way. They stolen pastors because it's not Russian church. They stolen pastors and moved pastors to the prison. We, at the end of last year,
there's the pot calling the
pastors.
kettle black.
We could exchange that.
Oh, what is? Sorry, I was finding the.
I was saying that he's calling the pot the pot is calling the kettle black. He's talking about, hey, this guy's a pastor. They've stolen pastors out of Ukraine because they're not the Russian Orthodox Church. First of all, it's the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and he and the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian government have imprisoned multiple Ukrainian Orthodox pastors all across, and calling them, Russian collaborators. They've shut down churches. They've removed churches. They've actually just cleared out the church and then installed their government. I don't even know what it's called, but it's a government created religious sect, and that's what they're doing. They're moving out the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and they're reinstalling their own church, which is clearly much more pro-Ukrainian.
Yeah, exactly. So and even this whole prisoner thing, as I mentioned, they had him tied with their hands behind the back, shot him in the head, and then he goes to the pastor stuff, and obviously he's not exactly big on the religious freedom thing, and comes up with all kind of pretexts about the churches being Russian puppets or whatever. So yeah.
And this is pastor, you see.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So I wanted to show you, and this. So thank you very much.
We want to get that ended, right?
Yeah. Of course. We
And I
want.
think we will. And
We have to, of course.
do you have any questions, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. With the, how much money is the U.S. going to put into the fund that is being created today, and how does this provide long-term security for Ukraine?
Well, we don't know exactly how much, because we're going to be putting some money in a fund that we're going to get from the raw earth that we're going to be taking and sharing in terms of revenue. So it's going to be a lot of money will be made from the sale and from the use of raw earth. And as you know, our country doesn't have much raw earth. We have a lot of oil and gas, but we don't have a lot of the raw earth. And what we do have is protected by the environmentalists, but that can be unprotected, but still it's not very much. They have among the best in the world in terms of raw earth. So we're going to be using that, using it for all of the things we do, including AI and including weapons and the military, and it's really going to very much satisfy our needs. So it's something that just worked out really well. We have a lot of oil, and we have a lot of gas, we have a lot, but we don't have raw earth. So this has just about every component of the raw earth that we need for computers, for all of the things we do.
And
This puts us in great shape.
And on long-term security for Ukraine, how does this provide?
I think they're going to have great luck. I think once we make the agreement, that's going to be 95% of it. They're not going to go back to fighting.
So there's the important distinction. He's basically like, this is as much security as we can give. And as we talked about before, it sort of is the best thing America can do to get us sort of in there. That's the best incentive against Russia we can do. He's like, that'll be 95% of it. Whereas Zelensky straight away, like, this is just the first step before we work out the real security guarantees. But so they're completely at odds. And look, this is just public. They've had these conversations with Zelensky privately as well. So he's like, publicly trying to battle Trump on this issue.
Yeah. And it's not
I've spoken with President Putin.
Yeah. And it's not.
And I feel very strong. I've known him for a long time, and I feel very strongly that they're very serious about it, and we'll make a deal. And when the deal is made, I don't think, we talk about security. Everyone's talking about the other day, all they talked about was security. I said, let me make the deal first. I have to make the deal first. I don't worry about security right now. We have to have a deal, because right now, last week, 2,000 soldiers died on both sides. 2,000, and they're losing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 a week. So as we sit here and we talk, people are getting shot and dying on the battlefield. And they're not American soldiers, but they're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers, and we want to be able to stop it. And we want to be able also to spend money on other things. We don't want to, this is a tremendous amount of money, and what the Biden administration did was terrible. They were giving money, but he had no security on the money. Europe, as you know, gave much less money, but they had security. It was in the form of a loan. They get their money back, and we didn't. And now, at least we're protected, because the American taxpayer has to be protected too. But this is an incredible agreement for Ukraine, because we have a big investment in their country now, and what they have, very few people have. and we're able to really go forward with very, very high-tech things and many other things, including weaponry that we're going to use in many locations, but that we need for our country. This allows us to do this.
Yes, Trump said, look, we can get the ceasefire straight away, and we can sort of start ironing out the deals, which isn't too bad of an option. I mean, if you start a ceasefire now and it breaks down next week, you're sort of you're back to the drawing board. But you can do that now. You can sort of have a ceasefire, and then in the ceasefire, we'll bring it down. Yeah, I was going to sort of mention that. He had an opportunity to counter anything we're saying, and we'll bring it up. But I don't see any counter argument here from TF.
No, and this is par for the course for people. They come on here, and this is what the left does. Period. They come on here, and instead of actually bringing up any sort of valid points or anything like that, oh, you're just you're the propaganda from Russia or whatever they accuse you of. You're a racist, whatever else. And then they're like, I'm leaving the channel. Well, first of all, TF, I've never seen you on here, so don't act like you're a subscriber. Why do you people do this? Why do you people, I don't care if it's this type of political stuff or people down in the comments of a video that I made that they don't like. It's like, oh, I've been a long time. No, you haven't. You're quit pretending that you're a subscriber. I've never seen you in the comments, and I pay attention, trust me. So, just say, hey, you know what? I don't like what you guys are saying because I prefer my echo chamber, and then go watch your echo chamber and just leave. Or if you want to convince us of something, throw up some compelling arguments or discussion points, and we'll have that discussion. But all you guys ever do is like, oh, I don't like what you're saying. I'm leaving. Bye. See ya. We don't want you here.
Yeah.
Everybody else, we do want you here. Love you. There you go.
See, that's the thing. Hey, even if people disagree,
George,
we do want you here.
George, yeah. I want you here. You're having a rational discussion, and I would love to hear your points. And I am a 100% persuadable. If you guys can make some valid arguments that make sense to me, it'll completely change my viewpoint on this entire thing. So thank you, George, for being a grown-up that disagrees with us and stays on the channel and is part of the discussion. I don't want to echo. I've never wanted this channel to be an echo chamber. We don't want this podcast to be an echo chamber. And that's not what this is about. That's why we have a live podcast. So people can come on here and educate us, change our minds, persuade us, and us do the same going back at you.
Exactly. I'm glad George is here. I wish the other fellow would stick around if he had it. Maybe he doesn't.
No, I don't wish he'd stick around. He's a douche. Bye.
But, because you and me, we have a similar position where we're not too fond of Ukraine. So it would be good to try and bring in the Ukraine side of it or whatever. I mean, I'll try and...
We completely agree on Israel. I mean...
Yeah, what an echo chamber that is here, See, they're fun 100%. Too, but sometimes it's kind of good. Like, I don't have to... I got to battle Gary in the chat. It's like, Gary, we're in agreement. And the chat's sort of in agreement. But at the same time, we do like that, the disagreement and the multiple perspectives. Like in future, I might try and bring on some pro-Ukrainian guests or something and, talk about various stuff.
I think that would be great. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah. We'll keep playing through a bit. I might, because, quite a lot happens. And we won't have time to go through sort of all of it, but I'll try and skim through a couple of the important, because there are a couple of moments throughout it. You can tell things are almost, we've sort of covered them a little bit about it already. There's some sort of disagreements there. So I might try and skim through, and then we'll get to the main bit, which is the last 10 minutes or whatever. It's good to see people agree on emus. I'm not sure what the agreement
is. The problem is, Chris. The problem is, Chris, and this is not a negative at you, but you're a details person, so all of it's important to you.
Yeah, I could play the whole thing, but. You Americans and your attention spans, I don't think you could handle it,
That's right.
But we'll try and skim through a couple of parts. We won't get to all of it, but just if you would watch the whole thing, you can see this whole 40 minutes. There's all these, they're at odds. And Zelensky's just playing it wrong completely the whole time. And it's not just that this was a planned ambush. It's sort of at the end, it was sort of the climax. It's sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. As you'll see, basically Zelensky says to Vance, what kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Oh, okay, so what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Yeah. We're here for diplomacy. We're trying to end the war. And you're ridiculing the whole concept.
Yeah.
So you just get out and go home. Forget about the deal, basically. So I'll see if I can find bits to skip through, and we'll jump to the last 10 minutes pretty
Yes,
soon.
go ahead, please.
If I can just yes. In the document, there is one of the very important points. If we speak about business and investment, we never had LNG terminals in Ukraine. This document will open. I mean, the next document,
This
but
is
anyway,
in the weeds details.
I would say I'm far superior to George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. Now, you know I'm only kidding. For Ukraine, think of the parents of all these people being killed needlessly.
they came to our territory.
Should have never started. This would have.
I'll back up a little bit.
Is
Already.
one of the
There's
most
a couple of these
important
moments.
things
You can
because
tell it's tense.
we have tremendous death taking place as we speak, and I don't want to have that. You know, think of the parents. Think of the whether they're in Russia or Ukraine. Think of the parents of all these people being killed needlessly.
They came to our territory.
Should have never started. This
Zelensky, you can tell Zelensky doesn't like that Trump sympathizes with the dead Russians or whatever, which is understandable. But it's just another part of this tension.
would have, if I were president, this would have never started.
I'm sure Zelensky doesn't. Because he'd say Putin's bad no matter who's.
Will you continue sending military aid to Ukraine after the U.S. signs this agreement with Ukraine?
Yeah, we're
And the
gonna be
question
continuing.
to President Zelensky: do you feel like the U.S. is on your side? That President Trump is on your side at this moment?
What do you think?
He wants to know, do you think that, sort of a stupid question. I guess we wouldn't be here if I wasn't.
I think that the United States on our side from the very beginning of occupation, and I think that President Trump on our side, and of course, I'm sure that the United States President will not stop support. This is crucial for us. It's important for us. Yes. And Putin, the president speaks about the people and the soldiers which are dying, but they came to our territory, they came to our land. They began this war, and they have to stop. And I think this is the question, with really the most important question. Can President Trump, I hope yes, with some other allies, to stop Putin, withdraw these enemies, our enemy, withdraw these troops from our land?
He's pushing. You want Trump to get Putin to just leave Ukraine. That's not happening. It's delusional.
Yeah, it is. It's completely delusional. There was a comment up here that I wanted to, but I forgot. Oh, I know what it was. Somebody talked about. There's been a lot of talk about. It looked like Zelensky was high. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if anybody else. That has been implied on many different forums. I see it all over X. I see it on other social media platforms. I don't know. I think he's socially awkward, and then on top of that, he's socially awkward, but at the same time, and he can't read the room. And on top of that, he's very narcissistic, right? So I think that ends up leading to some really weird behaviors. And he's nervous a little bit. You can see he's moving around because he's nervous. And there are parts where he's wanting to confront Trump as Trump is speaking in some of these, and he's like moving around to like shed off some of that nervous energy. I don't know if he's high. I don't know if he's on amphetamines or something like that. I don't think he is, but I think it's a discussion point that I keep hearing.
Yeah, I think Russia have said for a while that Zelensky does cocaine or something. But Lavrov, he's sort of like, I remember there was one interview and someone's like, oh, Zelensky said this. And Lavrov's like, oh, yeah, Zelensky says a lot of things, depends on what he smoked that day or something like that. But yeah,
he could just I'll give this to him too. Yeah, he's fried, jet lagged. I'm not gonna completely brush off the fact that he's stressed out, and he does have the weight of a country on his shoulders, but at the same time, I'm also not going to dismiss his absolutely disrespectful behavior all throughout this press conference, where he just thinks this is his press conference, and it's not. Where he's still trying to make a case to fight a war with Russia, and that's not what this visit is about. That's not what this press conference is about, and he just doesn't get it.
Yeah, I'm trying to, because I've got someone's done a bunch of timestamps of some things, but it's on a different video, which has a different the time's obviously different. I'm just trying to find out the next part to show. Just bear with me.
And I think that you asked about the history, I think that if President, or when, he will stop Putin, if President Trump will bring peace to our country, I think he will be on this wall in time.
We've had very, very good talks.
What about military aid to Ukraine?
President Zelensky just said that there will be no compromises with Vladimir Putin. I just wanted to ask both of you. Firstly, are there compromises that you think that President Zelensky is going to have to make? And President Zelensky, is there anything that you may be able to offer or bring to the table, for example, elections? Thank you.
I think you're going to have to always make compromises. You can't do any deals without compromises. So certainly he's going to have to make some compromises, but hopefully they won't be as big as some people think you're going to have to make. That's all. That's all we can do. I'm here as an arbitrator, as a mediator to a certain extent between two parties that have been very hostile. To put it mildly, they've been very hostile. There's been a vicious war. There's been a vicious war. It's a very level battlefield, and those bullets go out, and as I've said many times, we were talking about it with Pete, many times the only thing stopping those bullets is a human body. And in the case we're talking about generally, you answered that question, it was a nice question. So this is a very dangerous situation. This could lead to a third world war. This was headed in the wrong direction. If this election were lost, if we didn't win this election, and we won it by a lot, that was a mandate. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote. At the this was one of the things I said, we're going to get this thing settled. If we didn't win, I think this could have very well ended up in a third world war, and that would not have been a good situation. What was your second question?
That's a really good point. This third world war thing. There really is a risk of America and Russia going to war if you're too strong against Russia. You're supporting Ukraine with weaponry to kill Russians. It's very dangerous. So I think that's a good. So people who cheerlead Ukraine, it's like they treat it like a sports game or something, and they're just going for their team. But they're gambling on humanity in a way. I think that's why Trump saw it at the end of the bar. He's like, you're gambling with World War III.
Well, unfortunately, we have a large portion of Americans, and I can't speak for the rest of the world. I think this is true for the rest of the world too. But I think we have a large portion of Americans that are rooting for Ukraine because it's counter. They feel like it's opposition to Trump. I think that's a huge part of why we're getting so much. And I've watched several videos today of not only news reporters, but even influencers and things like that on social media, replaying what happened in the White House that we're getting ready to play in just a minute, and saying it's all Trump and Vance's fault, and that they were acting like clowns, and like they're watching something completely different in my point of view. And on top of that, they're siding with a foreign leader over our own government. And look, at the end of the day, politicians, I'm not saying that we should question your patriotism or anything like that, but I think it's very clear that no American would go to another country and do what's being done here. Like it just wouldn't be done. And quite frankly, any heads of states that I know of wouldn't pull the shit that he actually pulled in the White House. It's very disrespectful.
Yeah. Before we jump to the end, I just haven't got the timestamps myself, so I might see if I can just use some of these ones until we get up there on a different window. There's the suit question, maybe.
Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest. Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit.
I think this was unnecessary.
Do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting the dignity of this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like
yours.
Yes. That'd be great.
Maybe something better.
Yeah, it was kind of stupid. Then you can see Trump sort of tries to patch that up by saying, "Oh, I kind of like your suit." Or
to try and
somewhere here.
do something to stop the death.
If I can answer, yes. If I can answer,
Please,
sorry,
go ahead.
please. please.
And I do like your clothing, by the way.
Yeah, really?
Even though I think he's a great guy, by the way. But I don't know if you two like each other, but you know what? I think
No,
he's
no,
dressed, I think he's
why?
dressed
I like
beautifully.
this guy. I don't know
I think
him.
he's dressed beautifully.
So I have more serious things.
But you can see there's still, this isn't a planned ambush. This could go okay. A bit of a joke, bit of
Yeah.
levity.
I mean, if Trump and Vance and everybody else in the White House were, coordinating to make Zelensky look like a clown, it could have gone a lot worse. I mean, they've been extremely gracious throughout this. I don't know how you see it objectively any other way.
Yeah. Just skip ahead
He
a little bit.
broken his own signature. He broken 25 times.
I think beforehand Trump had sort of said, look, I think I can get a deal with Putin. I think we can get Putin to stick to the deal. And Zelensky comes in sort of contradicting all that. Basically, no, you can't make a deal with Putin. And I think he talks about the Minsk agreements, which we might quickly touch on. He tries to say, Russia can't be trusted because they broke the Minsk agreements. That's very one-sided. We'll put it that way. I might flesh that out a bit more afterwards.
25 times he broken his own signature. 25 times he broken ceasefire.
But he never broke to me. He never broke to me.
No, you were the president.
He
You
never
were the
broke-
president
he
during.
never broke to me.
In 2016, you've been the president, Mr.
Pause it right
You've
there.
been the president, but
Like that was completely disrespectful, and this is where it starts. But that right there was completely disrespectful. That should have never been stated. And if he didn't have his head up his ass, he would have been smart enough to realize, like, hey, don't contradict him right there in front of us. Like that, again, this whole discussion right here is where it goes off the rails. And these are the things that should have been discussed behind closed doors.
Yeah, and he keeps referencing, the Minsk agreements that were broken. Maybe if we have time at the end, I might go into a bit more detail about that. But basically, Ukraine never really intended to sign the Minsk agreements.
Yeah.
You have statements from Merkel and, was it Hollande from France, basically saying, it was just to buy time. We could sort of strengthen Ukraine's military force to get ready. Merkel basically said something to the effect of, look, Minsk agreements, we saw it as a frozen conflict and the deal wasn't supposed to fix it. But whereas Putin, and if you look at, if I have time, I'll go into it later, this was supposed to fix it. You had the separatist regions that had voted for independence, but even Russia was not accepting them. You did have Crimea that also voted, and Russia did take them, likely because it's more important with the base in Sevastopol and the warm water port and all that kind of stuff. So he took that one, but whereas he didn't take Donetsk and Lugansk, he was happy to leave them out to dry in a way. Well, he was happy to leave them as part of Ukraine, and he was sort of working with Ukraine. Obviously, Ukraine and Zelensky would debate all this, but this is sort of the other side, and I think there is something to it. They basically, Ukraine with these deals, they were supposed to give these regions more autonomy and have sort of elections and put something into their constitution, but they didn't take it. They were planning. I'll show one. I got a 60-second video which will sort of sum it up better than I sort of can. So you had this deal. Zelensky's basically trying to say, and this is a common thing, when it all breaks down at the end, he says to Vance, Putin breaks the deals, like the Minsk agreement. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Like, okay, what are we doing here? That's a ridiculous thing to say. Where is it? So this was after the Minsk agreement that Zelensky's trying to say, it fell apart because Putin didn't agree to it, as if Ukraine did, want to give the separatist regions some kind of autonomy. Ukraine, they did publicly say, we can't do that because then the separatists would sort of have too much influence in voting in our country. But they signed it. That's what they signed. But they're saying, well, we can't do it because that'll sort of give Russia too much influence in our country if we allow the separatists to have sort of an autonomous region within Ukraine. But anyway, I could ramble a bit
and by the way, we had the United States trying to influence this in that direction, as well as the European Union trying to influence this in that direction. So it wasn't, anyways, go ahead and play.
Yeah. So this is during the ceasefire agreement that Russia broke, because Ukraine were totally going to uphold it. You can tell just by this during the ceasefire.
Your fight is our fight. Ваша боротьба – це наша боротьба.
2017
That's Poroshenko translating. He was the president before Zelensky.
will be the year of offense.
Рік 2017 рік буде ріком
2017 will be the year of offense. I'm sorry, do you not have a Minsk agreement ceasefire that Zelensky is now complaining that Putin did not stick to?
нападу.
Yeah.
All of us will go back to Washington and we will push the case against Russia.
Ми всі повернемося до Вашингтона.
And, yeah, not to split hairs or whatever, but the Minsk agreement was an agreement between Ukraine and the separatists, not Russia. Now, people say the separatists are funded by Russia, but I mean, technically on paper, this is a deal between Ukraine and the separatists, which was sort of a victory for Russia in a way, because it forced them to even acknowledge the separatists as an independent entity, and they only did it because they were getting their ass kicked on the battlefield. They were surrounded. In the negotiations, Putin was saying to Poroshenko, look, you guys are surrounded, let's kind of come to some kind of deal and I can save your men. And Poroshenko was just pretending, oh no, my men aren't surrounded, I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, it's just, long story short, when Zelensky says Putin didn't fulfill this agreement, so therefore we can't have an agreement now, I guess it's war forever, to hell with your diplomacy, Trump, he's not being honest. That's probably the most diplomatic way I can put it. Because look, this is Ukraine, they're ready for war. They're getting ready for war.
Вашингтону
During the
ми
ceasefire.
будемо відстоювати
With America's
санкції проти
support.
Росії.
Yeah.
Enough of a Russian aggression.
Досить вже російської агресії.
It is time for them to pay a heavier price.
Час вже щоб вони заплатили важчу ціну.
I believe you will win. I am convinced you will win.
Freaking
and
John McCain.
We will do everything we can to provide you with what
He
you
was all over
need
this.
to win.
Я вірю в те, що ви
Going back to
виграєте,
2014.
переможете. Я переконаний в тому, що ви переможете, і ми вам допоможемо всіма можливими засобами.
Це те ж саме гільзи з ворожих БМП, які розмальовані.
З Новим роком, дорогі мої!
Where was I?
He had, of course, not with you, but he had during those periods, he had conversations with our side. And we had Normandy format, you know, the France, Germany, Ukraine, and Russia. And he broken 25 times. That's why we will never.
Russia, France, and Germany, they were more guarantors, or whatever the word is, of the agreement. And yeah, Germany and France have since said it was, oh, well, we didn't really see that it was actually going to be stuck to, and it was a good opportunity for Ukraine to rearm, basically, and get ready.
Accept just ceasefire. It will not work without security guarantees. Security guarantees, maybe President is right about this document and other, but this document is not enough. Strong army is enough because his soldiers afraid, Putin's soldiers afraid of our soldiers when we're strong enough. If we are not strong enough, if we are empty, if our storage is empty, we can't defend our land. Today, you know, he knows that we have, all the world knows that we have meeting, yes? Why he's using ballistic? Putin today using ballistic on our hospitals, schools, and etc. Ballistic. So he knows that we are here and that President Trump is really have goodwill to stop this war. And you hear now the president. So why he's using? So he doesn't want to stop. He doesn't want. But I hope.
Skip ahead a little bit.
Otherwise, Putin will never stop and will go further and further. He doesn't want. He hates us, you know? It's not about me. He hates Ukrainians. He thinks that we are not a nation. He thinks, and he shared these thoughts, I think maybe with your team also, I don't know. But with all the Europeans, in media, official and not, he always said that there is no such country, such...
Putin has said a lot of things, which is likely Russian propaganda about how Ukraine, you know, it wasn't really a nation, it was more just a part of Russia, and the sort of to make a nation out of Ukraine was sort of like a project that was sort of artificial or whatever. But he has also accepted that he can accept Ukraine as a state, but just can't be a hostile state.
Well,
So more,
let's be real. It was kind of one of those things where it was going to be, you know, basically a territory of Russia, and they had, you know, Russian puppets running the country. And it was like, yeah, you're separate, but you're actually under our control. Well, when the when United States comes in, and then they freaking blow that up in the same way that, like, you know, this is very similar to like Puerto Rico or one of our territories, we would have a problem with that. They had a setup of how they wanted to run that region, and it was, quite frankly, it was working fairly well. Yeah, there was lots of freaking corruption. There's still lots of corruption, but it's just disingenuous what he's saying, and then the American stance on this. The fact is that the United States, as well as elements of EU, went in there, intentionally meddled for nation building and doing they intentionally wanted to overthrow the government and create a coup. What the United States was pissed about was that Russia beat them to Ukraine. They owned Ukraine, and the United States wanted to own Ukraine. And now we created this conflict where we went in and we overthrew the government and had a coup, installed this jackass, and we wanted it to be a pro-U.S. state on the border of Russia. And we expect Russia to just stand by and let that happen. This is the same normal gamesmanship that we play all around the world all the time.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. Technically, after the coup, or as to be diplomatic, the removal of Yanukovych by the parliament after a lot of violence, and that's basically a coup, but other people take issue with that word, but it's kind of hard to deny. For a while, they didn't have a leader because the
coordinated by the U.S. By the way.
Yeah, you had the phone call of Nuland basically picking Yatsenyuk to be the leader. He was the prime minister after the coup and everything. They're literally feeding the protesters. The protesters were killing police officers. And she's there. It's in my video. Well, it's in a lot of places or whatever, but it's in one of my videos where you have Victoria Nuland on the ground during this months-long riot against the government, literally feeding them. And the line is, "Hello, we're from America. Would you like some bread?" And she's trying to. It's funny because people are like, "No, we're good." She's like, "Please, take some." And the cameras are running. And anyway, but
Chris, here's what you needed to do. Chris, you need to take what's your documentary? 5 hours.
I do have the 25-minute remix, but 5 hours.
You got to get it down to about 10 to 12 minutes. Break it down to about 10 to 12 minutes, just to give everybody some back history and truth about what predicated all of this, because most people don't know. They just think, they've been told, they know what mainstream media has told them, and that is, this just came out of the blue. Here's Ukraine just out there doing their own business, this country minding their own business, and Russia comes in and takes over. It's not what happened, folks. The United States, the European Union, and have been conflicting indirectly with Russia through the Department of State, through mediums like USAID, with the CIA, under the guise of USAID, completely doing social engineering to make these types of things happen. Well, that's what you got to do, Chris.
There was a
10 minutes.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Should work. Yeah. I'll sum it down. Yeah, but I'll sum it up and do a narration, because I've got this thing and there's no narration. It's sort of just trying to let the footage speak for itself, which I think is great. But for some people, they don't really get it. You kind of have to sort of dumb it down a little bit. But there was this comment here, can you link Chris's channel? I'll always take an opportunity for that. Well, my channel is Watchdog Media on YouTube, but I'm also on Twitter here at Chris Todd Nolan. This is the 25-minute summary, but then that's my pinned tweet, so that'll be up the top. And then if you go down in the thread, this is the 5-hour series here. So I got part 1 with the coup. Hopefully, there's Nuland on the ground and Jeffrey Pyatt, the ambassador, during the violent protest. That's, Bandera, Shukevich, our heroes of Ukraine. I'll play a bit of that. Yeah, the Nazi collaborators. UN, we demand, recognise the AUN and UPA, apply the title of hero, like a national title of hero, to Bandera. These are the Nazis of Ukraine. They were at the forefront of the coup, fighting the police officers and stuff. The Ukrainian revolution, coup, whatever you want to call it would not have succeeded if not for these guys in the front line. That's them fighting the government. Here, better skip ahead before we get to the main case. But yeah, lots of, it wasn't exactly a peaceful transfer of power, that whole thing. Oh yeah, we'll play a bit of that while we're here. That's Ole Tannybok. He's like one of the Nazis there. You know, you can look him up. Some of the things he said, they're a little bit, you know. So, yeah, just the conversation of the coup.
Streets to be heard.
Yeah, Obama was there.
In preparation
saying,
for some sort of democratic process.
Yeah,
that,
supporting the coup. We support the peaceful
creates
protesters.
A government with greater legitimacy
You've just
and
seen
unity.
them setting
And
police on
that's going to
fire.
be challenging, but we're trying to help on the negotiations on that.
What do you think?
So this is the call.
I think we're...
I'll just quickly say, of course, this is what you get. Is this the Russian news network? Hey, Chris, if you've got good counterpoints, we will bring them up on the screen and we will put your comments here. So if you'd like to counter anything that's being said, please go for it and I'll bring it up. But this is the leaked call. This was recorded by Russia, I'm assuming. You know, it was released anonymously, but I mean, you know, you imagine it's the Russians that are sort of tapping into the phones and they got this call. So this is when they were, Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt were discussing during the violence, who's going to be in the government afterwards. Because the EU was pushing for some kind of negotiated settlement with early elections, but will keep Yanukovych, the guy who got toppled, in power.
We're in play.
I won't play too much of this. Sometimes I can't help myself when I get here. I'll play a bit of a ramble about the backstory.
The Klitschko piece is obviously the complicated electron here, especially the announcement of him as deputy prime minister. And you've seen some of my notes on the troubles in the marriage right now. So we're trying to get a read really fast on where he is on this stuff. But I think your argument to him, which you'll need to make, I think that's the next phone call we want to set up, is exactly the one you made to Yachts. And I'm glad you sort of put him on the spot on where he fits in this scenario. And I'm very glad he said what he said in response.
Good. So I don't think Klitsch should go into the government. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a good idea.
In terms of sort of the process moving ahead, we want to keep the moderate Democrats together. The problem is going to be Tony Book and his guys.
Even America knew this guy's a bit of a neo-Nazi. We probably shouldn't put him in power.
And, you know, I'm sure that's part of what Yanukovych is calculating on all of this.
I just
doesn't stop McCain from meeting him, obviously, even though he's a bit of a, you know.
I think Yachts is the guy who's got the economic experience, the governing experience. He's the guy, you know, what he needs is Klitsch and Tony Book on the outside. He needs to be talking to them 4 times a week, you know. I just think Klitsch going in, he's going to be at that level working for Yatsenyuk. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Okay.
When I talked to Jeff Feltman this morning, he had a new name for the UN guy, Robert Seri. Did I write you that this morning?
Yeah, I saw that.
He's now gotten both Seri and Ban Ki-moon to agree that Seri could come in Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So that would be great, I think, to help glue this thing and have the UN help glue it. And, you know, fuck the EU.
No, exactly.
There is a difference between private discussions that happen in the interagency process, in the building, and what we convey publicly as a U.S. government. And we have a responsibility to convey what our position is. Of course, you're discussing a range of options on a range of issues.
But if you,
that's what you do as a diplomat.
If you're saying privately behind the scenes that you're cooking up a deal, and then you're saying publicly that this is up for Ukrainians to decide, those are 2 totally different things. I understand that diplomatic discussions are sensitive and you don't want everything to come out, but those are 2 totally different positions.
Elise, what do you think happens behind closed doors when people are discussing issues internally through the interagency?
This is not discussing issues. This is talking about a deal that the U.S. was cooking up.
My mission here today.
So, again, what she's pointing out right there is the fact that, hey, you guys are absolutely lying to us in the media. And I just want to go ahead and make the connection right now. We have Jen Psaki right there, who is now working at, CNN. So it's the same people that were lying to you for the government, and they move away from the government, and now they're still holding the freaking leftist narrative and still lying to your face in the media now. And, yeah, what do you think happens behind closed doors? Of course we're going to lie to your face and say something else publicly compared to what we're actually doing behind closed doors. It's just the cognitive dissonance for the people that support these yahoos, to me, is astounding.
Yeah, and just while we're on that call and this coup thing, I think then I've got
Victoria. When people are discussing issues,
responding to
continue the conversation. My mission here today, on behalf of my government, was to continue the conversation that we are having with members of the government, members of the opposition, members of civil society, to try to address the deep issues here and to try to bring together a moderate center of individuals who are prepared to work for de-escalation of tensions, restoration of human dignity and human rights, political reform, and a restoration of a political center here that can work together. A national technical government, as most Ukrainians have called for, that can take Ukraine back to economic health, back to support from the IMF, back to Europe, and to free and fair elections. Obviously not going to comment on private diplomatic conversations,
About the leaked call.
other than to say it was pretty impressive tradecraft. The audio was extremely clear.
Anyway, I didn't mean to get too into that. I think my main point of this was just after this coup, so that was in February, and then you basically had a, what's going on here? Some kind of a interim government where this Alexander Turchinov was the president. Has anyone in this chat, I'd like to poll, has anyone ever heard the name Alexander Turchinov? He was the
quick.
acting president. There's the Nazis there. Look at that.
Before you get into that, let's just kind of talk a little bit about what she said. Basically, what she said was, hey, you know what? Look, we're trying to do rainbows, fairies, and gumdrops over here. You know, spread diplomacy. What she's not telling you is, no, what we're really trying to do is put up a vassal state on the border of Russia, because that's what her real intentions were. That's what the United States' real intentions were. So that's what actually was taking place with what they were doing. They created the division. They created that situation with the media that they stood up through USAID. They created all the tension that was taking place there between both them and Russia. So they created the conditions so that a war could happen and or they could overthrow the government and install a puppet of the United States, which, you know, generally speaking, I'm not that against it. But again, we can't pretend that that's not what happened and that Russia's just the bad guy here. That was a vassal state of Russia. Let's just be frank. That's what it was. And the United States went over there and tried to take it from Russia, and we did successfully to some extent. But in the wake of that, what we have are millions of people dead now, or at least tens of thousands of people dead now because of this war. We created the conditions to start that war. And by we, I mean the West. It wasn't just the U.S. It was the EU. They all wanted this whole thing too. And then on top of that, they did all that. They created a coup. They overthrew the current president that was diplomatically elected, and then they continued to talk about including Ukraine into NATO, which further instigated what we see here today. So I thought that was worth highlighting on that point.
Yeah, as she mentioned, we want to bring Ukraine closer to Europe because a lot of this kicked off because Viktor Yanukovych was, he wanted to do, because he was, basically, somewhat of a Russian puppet, but not completely, because he was sort of trying to Europeanize a little bit. He was flirting with the idea of signing up to the European Union, at least the first step, the association agreement. But the deal, it wasn't very good. And it did have some sort of backdoors into NATO. They had some kind of security alliance, which I'd have to go look at it. I've got it in some of my videos here. It was a backdoor into NATO, and Russia knew that, and America knew that, and that's probably Yanukovych knew that, and that's why he did the deal with Russia. And then all these people took to the streets like, "Oh, we want to join the EU," and all that kind of stuff. And this is just a footage of some of the themes or whatever.
Jeff is that close to getting banned. You're that close. I'm gonna at least put you in a timeout.
And of course, there's just a picture of one of the freedom-loving, Ukrainian fighting for democracies or whatever. They love, some national socialist themes are popular among some.
Иногда в некоторых людях она есть проступает.
On the front line. Because it's important because they are the minority, but they were the ones at the front of the coup fighting the police and the front lines of the early stages of the war. And without this element, it probably wouldn't have happened. It wasn't just grandmas peacefully protesting for the EU that toppled the government. It was these guys mixed with the West.
No, let me address George Q's here point. No, George, what I said was that the United States created this tension. Okay, without a doubt, for all intents and purposes, Ukraine was originally a vassal state of Russia. All right, they had Russians all through their government, and then what the United States did was come in with the CIA, the USAID. They created tensions in there. They created a media campaign, a propaganda campaign to create the conditions in which they could replace the leaders, which they did, and then continued once we got a pro-American in there, which we facilitated that, and then on top of that, we continued to push the idea of Ukraine joining NATO. That's what instigated this entire war to begin with, and we and the EU and other elements within the EU were absolutely doing that. We were messing with stuff that we shouldn't have been messing with. We had no business messing with, and we created conditions for war. So yeah, there was elements of Ukraine that were responsible that went along with this, but mostly who's responsible is the United States, because as you can see, we were the front-facing element of that. We have Victoria Nuland, we have freaking John McCain up there, we got Lindsey Graham up there, outright provoking Russia, and that's all before the war started. I lost audio, I think. Oh, Chris, I don't know if you need to unmute your mic, Chris.
Sorry. Forgot to unmute. Anyway, these things will happen. I was just going to say...
I remember my first beer.
Yeah, George, I would love to know what George would make of this series of mine. And if you hear next episode, I'd love to bring up your criticisms. I'm sure you'll have a few. But my main point of bringing up my video, besides the shilling and the self-promotion or whatever, is, Alexander Turchinov, he declared this, okay, I don't want to get into all of it. Crimea had been annexed by this point. The separatists had started taking over buildings and demanding a referendum on independence. And a lot of these separatists, including some of the leaders of the separatists, did come from Russia. So Ukraine was dealing with Russians coming over and doing some kind of destabilization or whatever. But at the same time, there were people in the east who didn't support the coup. And like here they are sort of there. The separatists, they've sort of taken over buildings. And this Turchinov, who's the acting president, elected by nobody, he declared the anti-terrorist operation to send in the army to crush them. And this is basically the real start of the war, I think. Because yes, you had Crimea. Yes, you had little green men from Russia, But Ukraine's the one that sent in the tanks and the jets and started bombing their own people for 8 years. And that's the story that's not covered. So I understand people would say, oh, this is sort of the Russian side of you. Sort of. But this is all true, and this is the stuff that isn't covered. You hear everything else. Russia's the bad guy. You had a Russian puppet that betrayed Ukraine by not agreeing to the EU deal, so the people rose up peacefully and changed their government. And then Russia responded by stealing Crimea and destabilizing this kind of thing. And then they were at war this whole time, and then they fully invaded, completely unprovoked in 22. I guess that's sort of the Ukraine point of view. But
and that's what most Americans believe.
Yeah. And it's sort of, that's one perspective, I suppose. But like, there's all this, okay, an unelected guy.
It's not an accurate perspective. It's not even close to an accurate perspective.
Yeah. Because this, how many people know about?
It's the start of an anti-terrorist operation in the east of the...
Bear with me.
Ukraine's acting president has announced the start of an anti-terrorist operation in the east of the country, but on the ground witnesses reported no signs that Kiev forces were ready to storm state buildings occupied by pro-Russian rebels. The interim president said the operation would happen in carefully planned stages, step by step.
Anyone ever seen this guy before? In my opinion, he started, there's a lot of other factors, but he started sending in the tanks. He's a big part of this war, and no one even knows who he is.
Alexander Turchinov spoke 24 hours after an ultimatum expired for the separatists.
So anyway, it goes through, but your point is, back in February you had the coup. There's so much stuff. I better get back to the thing, otherwise I could talk about this for hours. Point is, you had the coup. This guy, unelected, started the government. So that was back in February. And they didn't have the election until the end of May. By then the war had already well and truly kicked off before they finally elected someone, Poroshenko, and continued the war. And the war basically continued to this day. But yeah, I'd encourage people to, because eventually at some point they have Is there somewhere in here? There's the. All right, I'll come back to it if we have time. But actually, no, I might have the spot. It's very close here. A lot of provocations, a lot of deaths already happened. Oh, here we go. I may as well. I'll get back to it very soon. But some of these things, I'm just like, well, I've got to show
the
this.
opposition armed force on the march.
So that's the separatists in Donetsk. And then we have John Brennan, because of course John Brennan, head of the CIA, visited all around this time that this Turchinov started the military operation. I'm pretty sure he would have been telling them how to do it. Here's how you can crush the separatists and win the war and take back all your territory even back then.
Cheers and flowers from the crowds as they...
Yeah, so that's what Ukrainians.
Russia, they chant.
Chanting, like people don't understand the history of
As the speaker reminds
these
them
are Ukrainian
that today,
people that are
Victory Day
pro-Russian.
is
Does that
all
make
about
sense to people who
commemorating
only
Russia's victory over fascism.
Look at this at a surface level.
69 years ago. Clearly, for some on the streets, perceived fascism remains unfinished business.
Clearly, what we want to see happen is for the Ukrainian people to have their ability to define their future and free from outside interference and harm.
Were you in Kiev recently?
I was in Kiev a couple of weeks ago, yes.
Oh, Ukraine denied.
Could you tell us what your mission was?
I was out there to interact with our Ukrainian partners and friends. I had the opportunity to walk through the streets of Kiev and also go to Maidan Square and see the memorials to those brave Ukrainians that were killed trying to find liberty and freedom for their people. The smell of the burning barricades was still in the air. The memorials with the flowers and the pictures of the Ukrainian men, women, and children who were killed was really quite an emotional event for me and for the people that were there. The Ukrainian people deserve to determine their future, again, free from outside interference, and that's what the United States is trying to do. And to the extent that we here at CIA can work with our partners in Ukraine and other areas to give them the information, the capabilities that they need in order to bring stability and security back to that country, we will do that.
Polling stations.
I just thought that line's funny. You know, America, we're here to make sure that Ukraine is free of outside influence. We're the CIA, and we're here to help. You know, this is the referendum I wanted to get to because people don't know about the people that voted. You know, in the separatist regions. But always good to hear a bit of George. Thanks for the response. I want to notice that over 50% of Ukrainians at the time associated themselves with democracy and supported an idea to move away from Russia. This is what triggered Putin to annex Crimea. There definitely were, I think it's hard to work out the exact percentage, and it could well be over 50%. But in Donetsk, Crimea, Lugansk, no, they don't want to go to Europe. They see Europe. I remember at the time they were mocking Europe. I think at the time they had the Eurovision with the bearded lady that won Eurovision or something. It was a common propaganda point in the East here. They're like, we don't want to be the bearded lady EU stuff. We'd rather stick with our Russian culture or whatever. But yeah, there were many people in Ukraine that wanted to be free of Russia. But you know, it's a mixed bag, you know.
George, you don't think that the U.S. our intelligence agencies, if they saw an opportunity to drive division between Russia and Ukraine, so that the United States would have a foothold on the Russian border, that they wouldn't capitalize on that and exasperate it, which is what they did? It's not like, are we still working under the idea that the U.S. is just out there doing, you know, passing out gumdrops and lollipops? That's not what we're doing. Especially under the Obama administration, they were extremely provocative against Russia, and that's exactly what they did. They created the tension that we see here now.
And look, you said before about you know, annexing Crimea. Look, there's no doubt that Putin would have wanted to annex Crimea for his own sort of self-serving reasons of the importance of the military base there. And look, see that was Crimea. You know, voted. People disputed or whatever, but they voted to join Russia. When was that? February. This is now in May. Donetsk and Lugansk, they also vote. It's kind of a bit more ambiguous. They vote for independence. It's like a first step to break away from Ukraine and maybe to join Russia. Russia did annex Crimea, but they did not accept this. So this that you see here, no one in the world accepted this, not even Russia. They didn't, at the time, want to take Donetsk and Lugansk. But years later,
and why?
That's what they have taken.
And why does the democracy matter when they want to join Russia? Suddenly democracy doesn't matter. Like we have an entire region that has voted for joining Russia, and and we're beating the democracy drum, but suddenly when it doesn't go our way, it's no longer democracy. It's something else. It's Russian influence or whatever. No, there's a clear history with Russia and many of the people in Ukraine, and many of the Ukrainians consider themselves Russians.
Yeah, and Crimea is the strongest. So you hear talk about Putin annexing Crimea, and Zelensky, like a clown, keeps talking about, oh, we're going to take Crimea back. We can't accept the loss of Crimea. The Crimeans don't want to come back to Ukraine. Okay, you can say that the Crimean referendum was dodgy, and it probably was. It definitely was in some ways. Yeah, and of course they vote 99% to join Russia. I'm sure it's a bit dodgy or whatever, right? But even Western polls consistently over the years have found that Crimeans are happy. The vast majority of Crimeans are happy in Russia. So whenever you hear people talking about getting Crimea back to Ukraine, it's against the will of the people in Crimea. And some people might argue, well, it's not up to them. Territorial integrity, you can't have little regions voting to break off or whatever. I'm more for self-determination, especially with this complicated history. If the Crimeans don't want to be part of Ukraine, I don't think they should be forced to be. Donetsk and Lugansk, it's not as strong as Crimea. And, the votes was only in sort of half the regions. But there's, a lot of people that do want to join Russia, which can't be done.
And Chris, I'm not Chris Chris, whatever your name is. I'm not directing this at you because you weren't the one that came up with it. But this is the dumbest, idiotic argument that I hear on this point. Well, first of all, we have several of those countries that you just talked about, Poland for sure, that are part of NATO. So look, he's not going after NATO. He's not made any indication that he's going to do that. So this is a red herring to begin with, and it's just gaslighting people into supporting something that they wouldn't otherwise support. And also, why is it the United States' job to support Russian expansion? Like, the United States has done expansion operations all across the globe, and we would be pretty pissed off, and we feel justified in doing so. We went to Iraq, we went to Afghanistan, we went to, we played around in Bosnia, we're doing things in Africa, all over the world. And yet, if suddenly Russia got involved in that and started fighting against us, we'd have a real problem with them, and we would probably start a war with them because they're providing material aid and support. It's like, there's other than just saying this, there's no evidence that there's a specific reason, and you can buy that reason or not, why Russia has moved into Ukraine. And I think it's a pretty logical reason from their part.
And it is because the United States, to Ukraine.
It is very specific to Ukraine. And we would be doing the exact same thing, but yet, like, we keep bringing this, I guess we're just going to let them roll into Poland. Well, no, Poland's part of NATO. Like, he's not going to do that anyhow.
Yeah. Basically, because you hear that from everyone, Putin wants to recreate the USSR. And if you listen to it, pretty much most of the people that say that will point to one comment that Putin made where he said the collapse of the Soviet Union was one of the worst geopolitical events in the 20th century. But you understand this from a Russian perspective. You had the USSR, and overnight they lost all these territories, and then they suffered all kind of starvation. And, like, obviously from the West we see it as the fall of communism is obviously a good thing, and that's really all we see. But, there is the Russian side of things where it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows when the USSR collapsed, and all of a sudden you just had all these countries breaking away and stuff. But people use that one comment Putin says as proof that Putin wants to recreate the USSR and, take Ukraine. It's all just a massive assumption at best, propaganda at worst, more likely.
Yeah, and I had to look it up because I wasn't sure, but Lithuania is part of NATO too. So, like, those bases are covered. It's a red herring that keeps getting thrown out just for gaslighting purposes. Yeah. It's nonsense.
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to jump in this Ukraine thing for Ukraine's sake. You have to then go, but then Putin's going to invade this. Actually, I think Zelensky says it at the meeting. He's like, it's not just Ukraine. Then he's going to go into the Baltics and Poland or whatever, and then you will feel, I forget exactly what it says, but we'll come back to it. I'll jump back to it pretty soon, actually. He says, you will feel it. Trump says, don't tell us what we will feel, He's trying to do the propaganda that Russia's going to continue.
It's like making the case that just because the United States went to Iraq and Afghanistan, that we're also going to move into Syria and Libya. Oh, wait. Never mind. My bad.
That's funny. I get you.
All right.
But yeah, I get the idea. You know. We'll jump back. I'll just quickly show this referendum because most of this is May 11, 2014. So this is before Ukraine currently has no elected leader at this point. You still have Turchinov. Poroshenko doesn't get elected until the end of this month on the 25th, but on the 11th.
Are being prepared across Donetsk for Sunday's referendum, a vote widely condemned as illegitimate. It's unclear what a yes result would lead to. The question is, do you support the People's Republic of Donetsk? It appears designed to appeal to those who want to remain part of Ukraine but with more autonomy, as well as to those who'd like the region to break away and join Russia. Today we have the support of all the city authorities of Donetsk, says the...
So these are people, they're all voting. Massive turnout. Not much coverage in this.
These people is not terrorist. It's not terrorist. All this is not separatists. Да, покажите.
So they vote. And here's another thing. I won't show this because people get shot and killed or whatever. But in one of the polling stations, you have these Ukrainian paramilitaries literally take over the polling station to prevent people from voting. And they actually shoot and kill 2 people here. This is Ukraine. Okay, we've got to support that. So guy dies there.
It's taking place here.
Yeah, and then eventually Poroshenko gets elected. But anyway, I could go on for ages with that. But once again, let me just finish with a good old plug. So that's only part 2. It goes on and continues with the war, all the Ukrainian war crimes, bombing this, that, and the other, bombing lots of hospital. Who cares if Ukraine bombs hospitals and that? It's all Ukrainian bombing their own people.
In the eastern Ukrainian...
Anyway, so it goes on for a while. Poroshenko, here we go.
Vilnius.
Poroshenko, he's like, so the war's off, he's all happy. He's like, but we're still going to push ahead. So the previous guy didn't want to join the EU association agreement. They put in, eventually, a new government. Straight away, let's sign that agreement. And he even references the pen that Yanukovych was supposed to use when he was supposed to sign it, but he decided not to.
Agreement by the pen, which mentioned EU-Ukraine Association Agreement, Vilnius, 29th of November.
So Yanukovych was supposedly supposed to sign, but he changed his mind, and that's sort of what set off the coup, I guess.
It was not happen then.
Didn't happen.
But the pen is the same, demonstrating historic events are unavoidable.
Anyway, that's sort of the backstory. Anyway, bit of a tangent, but I just can't help myself because I put years of research into that one. I can't recommend it enough to people. But let's get back to our good friend. But all that will help when it comes to this. When he's talking about Putin violates an agreement and all this kind of stuff, it's all related to all that kind of stuff. Because eventually, when they had the Minsk agreements, because there's fighting, eventually when they had the Minsk agreements were supposed to give those regions more autonomy because Putin was still not wanting to recognize them and absorb them into Russia. And Putin kept saying, the Minsk agreement is the only way to keep them part of Ukraine. That's the last chance you have to keep these. You got to give them more autonomy. You got to put it in the constitution. Because when the new government came in, one of the first laws they tried to pass was to restrict the use of the Russian language, like in schools or in street names, or I forget exactly what it was. I don't think it passed, but it was a symbol to the East. This new government is anti-Russian and fully pro-Western. So that might be fine if that's much of the country who supported that, but many of it didn't, Yeah, but anyway, back to this, all right? But all that, that's all important stuff, Sorry for the tangent, but... yeah, I'm trying to... What's going on here?
Second, about any negotiations. First of all, I want really to tell you, and I think that everybody understands that Ukraine, modern Ukrainians, nobody wants to stop this war. But at the future, any negotiations, it's understandable that.
This is a little soft. I'll get back to my louder video when we get. We'll jump to the last 10 minutes in 1 sec. I'll just see if I can show you maybe 1 or 2 things from this, where 3222 basically says that it will involve Russia will invade Poland. I think it's here. Come on now.
We will not stay. Russia will go further to Baltics and to Poland, by the way. But first to the Baltics. It's understandable for them because they've been they've been in the USSR, you know, they've been one of the republics of the USSR, and Putin wants to bring them back to his empire. It's a fact. And when he will go there, if we will not stay, you will fight. Your American soldiers, it doesn't matter, do you have ocean or not, your soldiers will fight.
Mr. President, would it be...
So that's, you know, he's sort of, a lot of the things he's saying is very sort of antagonistic to Trump if you think about him and know the context of it all. But I think we might.
He's basically saying, hey, if you don't give us the millions of dollars that we want, the billions of dollars that we want, and the equipment and weapons that we want, you're going to have to fight Russia, and that's just not true. That's not the two choices. It's not a binary choice that we have, and it's stupid that he would say such a thing.
Yeah, and you'll see in one of these bits coming up, he sort of says it again, you will feel, you know, the Russian whatever, and Trump's like, don't you tell us what we'll feel, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to get to the fireworks now. The last 10 minutes, we've got enough content. Well, you know, there's still more. If you really want to get into it, I'd recommend probably watching this whole thing, and watching my 5-hour documentary, by the way, but anyway. But yeah, here we go. Let's get sort of the last 10 minutes. Like it's,
What if Russia
spicy.
tries to invade or orders Russian aggression in response?
I just told you I don't think that's going to happen. And if that were going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal. If I thought that was going to happen, I wouldn't make a deal.
Some people may wonder why.
You know, they ought to focus on CNN on survival, not asking me these ridiculous questions. Focus on surviving, because CNN's got such low ratings. I don't think they're going to survive. Let's go. Please, go ahead.
I already mentioned Poland. That Poland was under Russian control for decades after the Second World War. When I was a kid, I looked at the United States not only as a most powerful country.
If I didn't align myself with both of them.
I think he says, like, why are you aligning with Putin or something to that effect?
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal? That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world, and I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, you know, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So
here we go.
He occupied it,
I'll try not to pause.
big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2014.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president, in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
I'm not playing cards.
Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October.
Hey,
offer some
pause that
words of
real quick, Chris.
appreciation for the United States of America.
I don't even know what to call it. The left, the anti-Trumps, the pro-Zelensky, pro-Ukraine, pro-war people, for them to say like this was planned and coordinated by the Trump and JD in the Trump White House. Like, it's absolutely insane. This was all started. None of this should have happened. There was no way to plan for this or, to coordinate this whatsoever. It's bizarre because nobody could have foresaw freaking Zelensky going off like this in front of the American media. That's what he wanted to do. He's trying to make this the spectacle and try to get the American people and the media on his side. And man, I don't think he understands how much he shot himself in the foot.
Exactly. And that's more clear because we've showed like a bit of it, the lead up, but it's even more clear if you watch the whole 50 minutes that this is not set up. This is not planned like this. It's just the whole thing. You have Zelensky ridiculing the idea of of any kind of a deal. He's like, he doesn't want a ceasefire. He just wants the security guarantees. He sort of wants to keep fighting. He sort of wants to take the mineral deal as a first step for more leverage to keep fighting the war and have more advantage that he has. I've got some clips of Trump saying basically the same thing. He's like, yeah, we empower them to be a tough guy with the deal. That's not what I want. The deal's supposed to end in the war, or at least help do that.
Yeah. No, there's not been any body language, any tone, any statement that Zelensky has said all through this meeting that has indicated that he has any that he's operating in good faith to end this war. He's not. He's continuing to leverage so that he can get more power, more money to continue to fight this war because he's delusional. That's why. Yeah, exactly. This is, you can see this could have definitely went a different way if it wasn't for Zelensky. So the idea that this was planned to be this way, like Trump invited him to sign that mineral deal. I don't think he planned to have this and then not
he could have just not offered the deal in the first place.
And the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our
you're not winning
country,
now.
staying
You're not
strong
winning ever.
from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't
not
been alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
Yeah, I'll comment on that because some people are like, yeah, Zelensky's tough. He's standing up for this, that, and the other. Like, what's the point of like looking like you're tough if you're damning your country to lose US support? So yeah, some people think he did well, but I think they're mistaken.
No, first of all, there's not a single Trump supporter that, by the way, we did win the election, that thought that this made Trump look bad in any way. Zelensky looks like an ass in here. The problem is we have a media that projects an image that isn't true. They're again trying to trick you into believing that we have all these people, just like they told you that it was going to be a landslide with Kamala Harris against Trump. It's the same thing. It's the same freaking illusion that they sell. First of all, not only is there a lot of Republicans that voted for Trump, 99% of those people are going to look at this and say, hey, you know what? Zelensky looks like an ass. But then there's also a large percentage of independents and even Democrats that are against this war that are also going to view this in the exact same light. Like, hey, you know what? I'm a Democrat, but this is crazy. I'm tired of war. I don't want war. This guy comes to our White House and continues to fight with and insult the president of the United States and the vice president right here. And they're like, hey, you're being disrespectful. You need to cut it. And he just keeps going. Get the heck out of Chris. You are crazy right now, man. You are buying what they're selling, hook, line, and sinker, and you're being foolish because the vast majority of Americans do not believe that they're not seeing this through the same optics that you are. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and this all went, the moment where it all went bad just before, because Trump is trying diplomacy between Ukraine and Russia. And what did Zelensky say before it all went to shit? He says to Vance, what kind of diplomacy are you talking about? We can't have diplomacy with Russia. Well, what do you think Trump's trying to do? He's not arming you to defeat Russia. That's not possible. That's delusional. He's trying diplomacy, and you come here and ridicule the whole idea. See how that works out for you. Okay, you're gonna have to. You even lost Lindsey Graham. Even Lindsey Graham says Zelensky looks like a brat, basically. Yeah. I think even Vindman, was it Alexander Vindman, the guy? He had something to do with the impeachment of Trump, with the call, the phone call. I think I haven't seen it, but the headline was that Zelensky wasn't ready for the big boys table or something like that. So like he's losing even the crazy pro-Ukraine people, you know. But yeah, that's the last. No,
if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something.
Putin, I'm pretty sure Putin never actually said we're going to take over Ukraine in 3 days. I'm sure they might have. Well, they could well have anticipated to take it over pretty quickly or something. But this talking point of they said they were going to take it in 3 days, but Ukraine resisted. It's like, yeah, find me the quote of Putin or really even anyone in the government saying that. The most closest I've seen is some Russian pundits on TV talking about how easy it was. But this, Putin thought he'd win the war in 3 days. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm sure he probably, maybe, yeah. Point is, this 3 days thing. Putin said 3 days. Did he? I think he full of crap, Zelensky. I don't think he said any such thing. But yeah, and that's the response there. Trump's just making a good point. Without us, you'd be over. You'd be over in 2 weeks. Zelensky's like, yeah, Putin said 3 days. We've heard that all before. Rah rah rah. It's like he's mocking the idea that like he's reliant. He's dismissing how reliant he is on help, especially from America. Without that US help, it's all over. Yeah. Well, we don't. This one, how many days then, if not 3? Like we don't know. We're all just assuming things. I don't like doing that. Anyway, Back to it.
If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very
I understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that
what
wasn't
is
with me.
It
That was with
wasn't
a guy named Biden who was not a smart person. That was.
Yeah, he said you should take a ceasefire. He's like, yeah, I'll take a ceasefire with guarantees. Well, he's like, well, Trump said he's not giving you that guarantee that you want. And he's proving Trump's point. He's saying you don't want a ceasefire. And he follows up Zelensky, ask the Ukrainians what we think about a ceasefire, as if it's not popular to get a ceasefire. So they're at odds, obviously. And it's no surprise that apparently after this he got turfed out. They had a lunch planned. Apparently Ukraine didn't eat that. I saw some story about the press saying that, the press...
He gave it to the White House staff.
Yeah. They didn't have their follow-up thing. They didn't have the follow-up presser, and I'm pretty sure Trump said, or someone told Zelensky, they basically didn't let him back in, and I think they told him, come back when you're ready for peace. Or at least I think that's what Trump said publicly. He can come back when he's ready for peace. He's obviously not ready for peace now. But we've still got a couple of minutes, may as well finish that up.
That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do we do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden, because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is, I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thanks.
I need the back of this.
We'll see, I don't know.
Guys, come on. Wait, guys, come on.
That's pretty much
currently
it.
There's no deal. Okay, play that. I got a clip I want to play too, Chris. You're freaking.
Oh yeah, if you got a short one, because this is maybe another 5 minutes of this. That's the last thing I've got to play. I don't know if you want to play this one or play whatever you want to go first. But this is just him commenting after. I'll play actually.
Oh yeah, go ahead and play that, so we don't lose context. Go ahead, play.
I just want to say we're going down to Florida. We have a big event tomorrow night. A big MAGA event, Make America Great Again. And it's we have another meeting today, as you know, with President Goodfield. I think our country has really turned around. We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week. Soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians. And somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody. And we're not doing that. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that. Not for this country.
That's true.
So we're setting a lot of records. Economically, we're setting records.
There's just a couple more minutes somewhere down here.
Pause that right there because I want to address this. So,
yeah,
Chris Hare, clearly you didn't vote for Trump, which is fine, right? But you can't be intellectually honest. Watch what we just watched, and then this be your takeaway. That you think that all of this is because he just didn't say thank you? No, I mean you're either just being dishonest or you're not very bright, and I just think you're being dishonest. And your hatred for Trump and all things Trump is blinding you from seeing the obvious that anyone with any sort of objective ability would be able to see. And it's exactly what Trump just said. He said, no, he's bringing him here. The whole point of this meeting is to bring this guy here and to negotiate for peace. And Trump's takeaway is exactly my takeaway. And again, anybody watching this with just in good faith, clearly, what this is about for Zelensky is to get Trump to agree to send him more money and more weapons so he can continue fighting. That's what this is about. Not that he didn't say thank you. It's that he's wanting to continue a war that nobody wants to continue to fund, and quite frankly, is immoral for any of us to support it, because thousands of people on both sides are dying. And we as Americans, we can't afford it. We're broke. We got $36 trillion in debt. We can't afford our own wars, much less funding another war. That's what this is about, Chris. So, especially, I want you to comment, but you need to be truthful and honest on here and not come up with these silly sayings that might throw somebody else off. It's not going to work here.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot more going on there, and the war is completely unwinnable. There's another factor. There's no way Ukraine can win this war. It might be a different story if there was, but and it probably is nice to say thank you anyway, even if it's obviously not the only reason. But I mean, are you going to keep giving stuff to someone who's not grateful. That's obviously not the main. Yeah, it's not even 5% of all the reasons. But even if it was, even if Trump's like, look, he's ungrateful, I don't want to give him any more money. Even that's not the worst thing in the world. But it's not, as Gary said, that's not the reason that it fell apart.
Okay, the fact that you're American or not doesn't change. The fact is you can't be objective because you hate Trump so much. I mean, I get it. You're still upset about 1776.
Like he couldn't vote for.
I get it.
I think that's a response to voting for Trump. I guess he's saying he
couldn't. Yeah, I was assuming that he was an American, and I realize he's still butthurt from the 1700s. We're still better. All right, we're no longer part of the crown. Yeah. We don't kiss the ring. It's all good, bro. Keep up.
That's right. You guys got it now. Apparently, Zelensky, he's over there. I think the UK is stepping up. So you guys can do it. You don't need America.
Well, let's not pretend you're not still part of the empire, Chris, because you guys are.
Look, it's all totally separate. Okay, totally separate. Well, I mean, we may have their flag in our flag, but besides that,
last time I checked, you got some of their monarchs on your money. I think that's still a thing, right?
Let's just back to Trump.
Flight. What? He's got to say, I want to make peace.
The question was, how would he come back, or how would the deal get going?
What?
What does Zelensky need to do to restart talks?
Say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I can tell you.
Did you tell Zelensky to leave the White House?
I don't have to tell you that.
Did you tell Zelensky to leave the White House?
Okay.
Says, I didn't have to tell you that, but I think he says, I think you know, as in, yes.
Go ahead. I think you know the answer to that. What? Wait. Look, I don't trust or distrust anybody. I just want to get a deal done. And if the deal happens, good. But you can't embolden somebody that does not have the cards, and all of a sudden that person says, oh, well, now I can keep fighting. We're not going to keep fighting. You're going to get the war done, or let them go and see what happens. Let them fight it out. I want anybody that's going to make peace. If he's capable of making peace, which he may or may not be, but I want somebody that's going to make peace. Again, he doesn't have the cards. When we sign up, he's got all of the cards. That doesn't mean he can fight. He's got to stop the fighting, stop the death. He's losing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's time to stop the death. Say it. Well, he says he wants it now. He wants to come back right now, but I can't do that. I can't. They should have an immediate ceasefire. That was the other thing he didn't want to do about ceasefire. A ceasefire could take place immediately. A contract, if you want to end the war, you sign up an agreement. That's going to take a period of time. It takes time. I want it to end immediately. And I think if you had a ceasefire, it would be a ceasefire, a real one, that would end it. But he doesn't want to do that. That's fine. Do a better deal. I want it to end immediately. I want a ceasefire now. He says, oh, I don't want a ceasefire. Well, all of a sudden, he's a big shot because he has the U.S. on his side. Either we're going to end it or let him fight it out. And if he fights it out, it's not going to be pretty. Because without us, he doesn't win, let me tell you. It doesn't matter what I'm considering. I'm just telling you. You saw what I saw today. That was not a man that wanted to make peace. And I'm only interested if he wants to end the bloodshed. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, we made it.
Yeah, and
I thought it was great. Good on Trump.
Yeah. And like there's no chance that, well, first of all, there's no chance, period, unless we suddenly got the U.S. putting troops or the EU putting troops in Ukraine, that Ukraine would actually end up winning this war. All right, so it's a losing war to begin with. I don't know. Somebody look up the number of people in Ukraine versus Russia. Look up their military versus Russians. I do think Russia's military is in bad shape. There's no doubt about that. But the fact is, they will throw people at it until the problem goes away. And they actually have the capacity to do that. So unless we get EU and the United States involved into that conflict, it's a war that will be lost. And then if we do get other nations involved, we're talking about all-out World War III. So, for Zelensky to go in there and shoot his only saving grace I mean, for him to do what he did, it's just absolutely crazy to me. It's his only chance of survival, and I don't know if he's even smart enough to realize that. Real quick before you play your one last one, that's never the one last one, I want to play this video real quick because I wanted to make the point.
Go for it. Yeah.
We were talking about
just having some background.
This is how they're recruiting people in Ukraine, just so that we're clear. So, let me play this for you. This is how the conscription works in Ukraine. They're doing this all over the country. Fan rolls up. By the way, you're now part of the Ukrainian army. Father doesn't get to come home to his kids, a brother, a son, and he's probably going to die on the front lines. And also, by the way, this is how you lose wars, by forcing people that don't want to become part of the military. You force them to become part of the military. Because now you have rot from within. And there's a ton of videos on X, folks. You won't find them any other place than X. And that's the other part of this, is like so much of this information is being hidden because it's not being shared anywhere other than X. So you're only getting what you're fed, and you got to realize that. I think most of our viewers do. All right, Chris, play your one last video.
Well, this was at the request of you, because you're like at the end get the Nazi stuff or whatever. This is This maybe not so much the Nazi stuff. It's sort of all tied together. It is this anti-Russian hatred. See, this was all before the coup or anything. It's just this is a Russian guy. He was sitting there with the ribbon of St. George, which is associated with the Soviet army victory in World War II, which of course some of these people don't really like too much. And they just sort of start, harassing or whatever. These, sort of anecdotes. Like striped bug. Okay, that's another thing. Striped bug. The ribbon of St. George is orange and black, and it's the same colours of a Colorado beetle, and it's a common thing to call sort of the pro-Russian types in Ukraine bugs, Colorado bugs, whatever. So that's what that was, a striped bug. There's a lot of bigotry. Look, just crazy stuff that Americans probably aren't aware of. Anyway, don't want to go into too much. A lot of stuff. Yeah, there's one of these marches. I don't know if that's one of the statues of Bandera or whatever, but one language. By the way, half the country speaks Russian, so here they are, like one language. Okay, what does that mean for the people who don't speak? This is from, because I had my 5-hour documentary, I also have like a 25-hour documentary. It's like 17 parts. I then summarized that into 5 hours and summarized it again. But anyway, so this is the one section on the events in Odessa at the very start of all this, where sort of the pro-Ukrainian types, that's the nicest way to put it, basically murdered a bunch of pro-Russian types, I suppose, in Odessa, set a building on fire, was beating people with sticks, and it was a massive part of the war too. So I won't go into it too much, but basically after the people in the east saw this, because maybe the separatists were struggling to find too many people to fight, after this it all changed. Everyone well, not everyone, but a lot of people in the southeast wanted to join up when they saw this running amok. Not so much, this is actually backstory to, this is, as I said, all before the coup, but this is just my movie where I show some backstory, and then I move into this massacre, which was basically the police are standing around doing nothing. The government arrested survivors. They didn't arrest the murderers. Anyway, But just more evidence of the culture, sort of neo-Nazi culture of Ukraine. This is before everything. Yeah, that was probably 2013. Or, to be fair, I regret this, because I didn't subtitle this. I sort of just pinched this clip and put it in there. They're saying glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes, and the video that originally did these subtitles is sort of making a bit of a propaganda by translating it as hail, which I understand, but I wouldn't have done it that way. He's saying that means glory Ukraine, glory to the heroes. But this is what you hear from Nancy Pelosi, Zelensky. But I do regret that translation. The hail is a bit propagandish. They're saying glory. Yeah, that does the wolf's angle or whatever. As I said, I really regret this hail, because it should just be glory. You don't need to translate it to the German for this fact. Pretty sure these are marches they do every. I'm assuming this is on the birthday of the Stepan Bandera. They do these marches. As I said, this is all before the war. I'm not sure the exact time, but probably 2013, 2012. Similar kind of stuff. These two Nazi collaborators committed their people. I'm not sure of them personally, but their groups committed atrocities against Jews and a bunch of other people. So anyway, there's a lot of this kind of stuff, and that's sort of my lead up of the culture that did to this, is the Odessa massacre, where they went to this building. That sign there says "We are for referendum." For the referendum, and obviously these types don't like it. They set the building on fire. There's a lady talking about it. They burst in. They go door by door, looking for people to kill. They got hatchets and blow torches, and just this really shocked me. Didn't get covered, of course. This is them at the end. They're going through. They live streamed it, and they're counting all the dead bodies. Anyway, this is pretty heavy, actually. This is pretty. It's funny. This is my video. It's got 500,000 views, but it is one of the most depressing videos on the internet. It's just the worst of humanity. It reminded me of like Lord of the Flies. Just absolute barbarism. And when Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022, he referenced this. He goes, "We will never forget the Odessa massacre. We know who was responsible. They haven't been held responsible, but we will find them. We have their names." And after Putin said that, all of a sudden I was getting heaps of views on this. It shot up to like half a million views or whatever. But anyway, that was just there's more stuff you can look up with Stepan Bandera, the UPA or the OAN, depending on the translation. A lot of sort of Nazi stuff going on, neo-Nazi stuff in Ukraine. They are a small minority, but an important minority.
Here's another recruitment video. They're taking this lady's son. And thank you, Plant. What was his name? He shared it. Plant Seal.
So jump in the car. We've got some American and European weapons and stuff you can use. Thank you very much. Jason's got a great point. I actually have a 5-hour documentary, which you should check out.
4 hours of it's the intro monologue.
You know what's amazing? In these 5 hours, I say nothing. I say nothing in those 5 hours. Not a single word from me. It's really quite amazing. It took a lot of restraint. But not a single word from me. No monologue at all.
Well, folks, I think that is going to wrap it up for us tonight. We'll leave on that on that note there. Hey, look, I think it's really important to make sure that we see both sides of this. I hate having to constantly throw out the disclaimer that I'm not a stooge of Russia, but just like Heterodox said there, if we don't put this out, nobody else is. And the same thing with Gandalf Grey here. is people believe, because that's what we've been told, is that Ukrainian is just completely innocent. This is a complex issue, and the American people, we're sending $1 million American dollars over there. We deserve to know all sides of the issue, right? We need to have a clear vision of what's actually taking place. But the fact is, the media, the government, and many other actors involved there don't want you to know the truth. They want you to believe that they're pushing a specific narrative. And just like the wars that we got tangled up into Iraq and Afghanistan, in hindsight, we all look like fools. And I think the American people are being played for fools here. I 100% believe that there be a very small minority that would still want to continue pushing money to Ukraine if we knew the truth of the situation. And yes, freaking Russia's bad, Putin's bad, but Ukraine is not innocent either. And the other part of this is, I do think this is a situation that was orchestrated, coordinated, ultimately by the United States government. And again, other elements, the EU, meddling into these affairs that really we should have stayed out of to begin with. But what we wanted, the intent was that we would have a vassal state essentially right on the border of Russia. And now what we have is chaos and death. So this is where we're at. And I think it is important that we, at least present this side.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it was a good show. Nice, massive one, 2.5 hours too. I have to respond to. I said before, I don't say anything in my 5-hour documentary. So Jason responds, so it's watchable. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that. And I'm on mute for 5 hours.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah. No, you're. Yeah, and the other comment there was Aim Atkinson saying Chris is on mute for 5 hours. Saying that to Jeff. There you go. You might enjoy that one. I say nothing.
I'm just gonna go watch that right now.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
All right,
I'm going to redo it and add in my commentary, so get in quick.
Thanks for watching. As we definitely plan on broadcasting Monday unless something crazy happens. I'm sure a bunch of other stuff will happen. But thanks for everybody for tuning in on this kind of ad hoc broadcast that we threw together. And yeah, and as you can see, my oldest son is back here on the headphones, chilling out, YouTubing it up. All right, folks. I want you guys to have a good night. Yeah, he's doing great. All right, folks. Have a good night. Stay armed. Stay ready. We'll talk.